So thank you everyone for joining in, and we shall start now, Risha. It's
Yes,
fine.
sir.
Yeah.
It's up to you, sir.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. So we are talking about delayed payments to MSMEs, the challenges that the enterprises face, and the solutions for recovering those delayed payments, or making sure that these issues doesn't arise. So we'll be discussing various things under the topic, and the agendas for the discussion in the webinar today would be the definition of MSMEs under Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Development Act. So how does the act define MSME? Uh, what are the conditions? What are the parameters for an enterprise to be registered as any of the micro, small, or medium enterprises under the Act? So the second is qualifying conditions. So as I mentioned, the qualifying conditions, what are the qualifying conditions? What are the parameters for the enterprises to be registered in any of these micro, small, or medium enterprises under the MSMED Act? And the challenges and issues pertaining to delayed, defaulted, stuck payments from buyers. So how does these issues arises in the first place? The challenges which the enterprises face in their daily course of businesses, which leads to the issues of delayed payments. The important provisions under MSMED Act for the benefits of MSME. So the MSMED Act is drawn for the benefits of enterprises, right? So there are a lot of provisions, beneficial provisions in MSMED Act which takes care of these issues of such as delayed payments, and there are other beneficial provisions as well. We'll try and we'll cover that also in today's discussion. And this after that, the solutions and way forward to resolve the issues of delayed payments. So when these delayed payment, the issues of delayed payment issues have already arisen. So what are the solutions and what are the way forward to resolve these issues? So what can be done given under the set of circumstances which the MSME is facing currently? So what could be the solutions and way forward in those circumstances? We'll discuss that also. The preventive measures to avoid delayed payments. So as I said, that we'll discuss the preventive measures also, and once the issues of delayed payment has already arisen, we'll discuss how to resolve them also. And going forward, the resolution mechanism, alternate dispute resolution, online dispute resolution, litigation. So there are ways to in which we can resolve the dispute, and the resolution mechanism could be alternate dispute resolution. We could go on online dispute resolution, or we could just simply go for litigation. So we'll discuss about that also. And yeah, as I said, the litigation provisions under various laws intended for recovery of payments or ways in which delayed payments can be recovered. So, as we all know, that the procedure which is adopted by the MSMED Act is generally followed by Arbitration and Conciliation Act, which is alternate dispute resolution, which is not litigation per se, but it is an alternate way to resolve a dispute, which is arbitration. First, it goes to conciliation, and if conciliation fails, it goes for arbitration. So we already know that the MSMED Act follows Arbitration and Conciliation Act as a method for resolving disputes. Not to say that these delayed payments issues cannot be settled or cannot be resolved by other ways, which is litigation. And when we say of litigation, we we say of actually going before the court and pursuing your claim. So the litigation would be for taking benefit under the IBC Act, or taking benefit under the CPC or Commercial Courts Act. So those ways would be litigation, and arbitration and conciliation, like conciliation, arbitration, mediation, would be alternative dispute resolution. And the things to keep in mind while doing business for its effective management, tips and suggestions. So lastly, we'll deal with some of the suggestions that we feel that is necessary for the MSMEs, and we'll give those tips and suggestions. We hope that it comes handy for all the MSMEs who have joined today. So going forward. So yeah, the condition precedent to be registered as MSME under MSMED Act, amended by the notification dated 26/6/2020. So as per the recent notification, the first category includes manufacturers and service providers, both in Both in category. Okay. So what are the enterprises, we may ask, under the MSMED Act? So the MSMED Act defines enterprises as micro, small, and medium enterprises, right? And what are these enterprises? So these enterprises are manufacturers and service providers. So when we say that these enterprises are manufacturers and service providers, we are covering a whole lot of territory under which a lot of manufacturers and service providers would be covered, right? And and it is an open-ended definition. It says enterprises. So any enterprise which is dealing in any kind of businesses or trading, even after this notification came and it was amended. So not only manufacturers and service providers were included in the definition, but it also included traders of goods. So when it included traders of goods too, it became kind of an open-ended definition under which any enterprises can come and get registered to, right? So earlier the manufacturers and service providers were only allowed to get themselves registered, not traders or wholesalers, or those who just act as a middleman, like they source products from somewhere else on a wholesale basis and they retail out to some other enterprises by factoring some profit in between. So those were not so those players were not actually manufacturers or service providers per se, but they were traders of goods and services, right? So as per the recent amendment, the traders were also included. So the enterprises definition has become more inclusive now. So uh, the two parameters basis which classification is made between MSMEs are investment made in the enterprises, plants, machine, and equipments, and also the turnover immediate preceding financial year generated by the MSME. So how do we determine which enterprises is to be registered into micro, small, or medium enterprises? So is uh, the parameters for that is the investment which the enterprises has made in its plant, machinery, and equipments, plus the turnover that the enterprise has made in the preceding year. So the parameter lay out the quantum of the investment and turnover required for registration as MSME under MSMED Act. So there are two parameters: the quantum of investment that you have made in your plant, machinery, and equipment, and the turnover that you are generating from that enterprises, right? And when both of these conditions are fulfilled, then your registration, the class of your registration is determined. So what are the parameters? So what is the value of the parameters? So we'll discuss that now. So there's this table laying out the quantum of investment and turnover for enterprises to be registered as any of the micro, small, or medium enterprises under MSMED Act. Note, both parameters, investment and turnover, has to be met for an enterprise to qualify as micro, small, or medium enterprises, basis the parameters laid out here and below. So it's not like that if you are only complying with one of those parameters, then that would not suffice for your registration. It has to be the both the parameters has to be met. So to determine your actual class of registration, right? So for micro enterprises, the investment made in enterprises in plant, machinery, or equipment should be 1 crore or less than 1 crore. So if we say should be 1 crore or less than 1 crore, so any amount less than 1 crore gets covered, right? So the limit is 1 crore. Your investment in plant, machinery, and equipment should not exceed 1 crore. Simultaneously, the turnover which you're generating from that enterprises should be of 5 crores or less than 5 crores. So when we say less than 5 crores, any amount less than 5 crores, even for 10,000, 15,000, 5,000, 7,000, are all covered. So the limit is 5 crore. If your investment in plant and machinery exceeds from 1 crore and your turnover also exceeds from 5 crore, then you'll go in the small enterprises section, which is 1 crore to 10 crore investment made in enterprises, plant, machinery, and equipments, and turnover is 5 crores to 50 crores. So if your investment ranges between 1 crore to 10 crore, simultaneously your turnover which is generated by the enterprises ranges from 5 crores to 50 crores, your registration would be falling under small enterprises. And As same for medium enterprises, the investment in your plant machinery and equipment should range between 10 crores to 100 crores, and the turnover generated from those enterprises should range between 50 crores to 50 crores. So I hope it is clear, by it is clear for all, whatever we have discussed right now. Okay, so we'll move ahead. So yeah, reasons for the delayed payments and its consequential effects on MSME. So there are a host of reasons. There are many reasons for which the issues of delayed payment actually arises before the enterprises. We'll discuss some of those reasons, and we'll discuss those in detail, and we'll discuss that how it leads to such situations of delayed payments. So the first is not documenting or recording of the transactions, delivery of goods, materials, or performance of services without any work purchase order, not recording terms and conditions in an agreement, not adept with quick turnarounds for reserving rights, etc. So the first and foremost reason for why the enterprises are facing these issues firsthand and in very rampant condition, they are facing the issues of delayed payments, is only because they are not recording their transactions with the buyer. And so any transactions that you're entering into, if you're not recording those transactions, if those transactions are not backed by any invoice, uh, any agreement, or let's say purchase orders or work orders, so then those transactions cannot be proved, because there is no recording of those transactions, right? There is this way of proving it by the actions of the parties, but it is not generally well taken when we lack the basic documents such as agreements and work orders and purchase orders. So whenever we are entering into any transactions with any buyer, or for any parties whatsoever, the first and foremost thing what we have to keep in mind is to document or record the terms and conditions under which we do the transactions, right? So if we have to deliver some goods, it has to be recorded that we have to deliver some goods under this timeline, and the consideration for delivering such goods would be this much amount. So if the all of these are recorded and all of these are documented before the transaction is happening, and if there is a breach in the transaction, then always we have an upper hand, because the terms and conditions were documented earlier, right? So now we can go to a court, or we can go to any dispute resolution forum, and we can claim it effectively that, see, these were the terms and conditions, it was recorded, it's signed by both of the parties, and now this party is breaching upon this particular terms and conditions. Now if your terms and conditions are not documented or recorded properly, then you cannot even point out what the particular breach is, right? So the breach could be of endless reasons, and for endless in endless ways, right? So if the terms and conditions are not recorded, we cannot point out that this was the agreed term between the parties, and now the other party is not complying with this term. So this has to be recorded, and to prove a transaction, it is always necessary to have an agreement in place, or if not an agreement in place, we should have at least work order or purchase order in place. Why I say we should have agreement in place rather than work order or purchase order, because agreements are a bit detailed from work orders and purchase orders. A work order and purchase order cannot say all the terms and conditions which are necessary for every transactions to be recorded, right? So the work order and purchase orders only have a certain and very minimal clauses which says 15% interest would be applicable. This is the timeline. The courts of this jurisdiction would have the jurisdiction to decide any disputes out of these transactions. So these are the basic conditions which are mentioned in the work order and purchase orders, which are minimal in nature. So there could be a lot more terms and conditions which could be incorporated and are important in every transactions, right? But purchase orders and work orders just just form a part saying that this transaction happened. It does not say effectively the terms and conditions under which those transactions were to happen, right? So it is always necessary to have agreements in place. And if not agreements, please make sure that you have at least work order or purchase order, so to at least prove that this transaction was happening between the parties. Now, extended credit period, continuing with the transactions even after delayed payment issues with the hope of retaining buyer client. Now, this is a very personal decision, very commercial wisdom decision, which depends. So I would say that any MSME should not give any services or goods to any person on extended credit period. So the MSMED Act says the 45 days is the credit period, right? After 45 days, there is a statutory requirement of paying your dues after 45 days, and if not paid, the MSMED Act says that the other party would have to bear 3 times the interest rate notified by the RBI for on upon the delayed payment. So the extended credit period should not exceed of those 45 days which are already mentioned in the MSMED Act. Now, in many cases, what I have seen that many MSMEs, what they do is they keep on delivering goods or services even after these issues are happening with them regularly. So let's say if any government institution is entered into a contract with MSME and they are not paying them on a timely basis, still the MSMEs are delivering them goods and services with the hope of retaining the clients. So now you have to decide whether retaining this client is more important for you, or realizing the payments which are dues from these clients are. So a lot of time what happens is when we keep on paying them, sorry when we keep on delivering the goods and services to the parties, and they keep on delaying the payments to the MSMEs. So what happens is they would in between pay you small amount, not the total amount, but they will always make sure that the some amount is remaining, so that you always have to enter into a transaction with them, right? So it becomes a vicious circle. You cannot realize your full payment from them, and you cannot leave them because there still an amount is due from them, right? So there is a lot of problem when you enter into this extended credit period. And it's not like that you should not enter into this extended credit period, because a lot of government institutions do uh do do not pay you on timely basis, and a lot of large corporate houses does the same thing too. But it is not to say that those credit period would always result in your loss, right? So a lot of times what I have seen that a large corporate houses would pay you at once after 1 year, but their payment cycle are such that they would wait for 6 months or for, let's say, 1 year, and they would make the payment at one time and as a whole. So in those circumstances, it is understandable that the extended credit period is allowed, because a lot of businesses are coming in from those parties, and it is reasonable to let go of those three times interest rate because of the increased business that the other party is bringing, right? So it is totally on the commercial wisdom of the business, of the businesses, of the managing partners, of the owners of the MSME, to decide and to determine whether extended credit period should be allowed, if it should be allowed, at till what period it should be allowed, and to what parties it should be allowed. It should not be that you extend your credit period to all the parties you're entering in transaction with, right? So you have to decide that, okay, this party seems good enough, this party's financial health is good, it has been paying us total amount, however not on timely basis, but it does end up paying us the amount. So in those cases, for those parties, you can extend your credit period, but it is not advisable to do the same for every one of the parties you are entering into transactions with, right? So going forward, challenges faced due to competition in relevant market, industry-specific challenges such as disrupted availability of raw materials, competitive rates with minimal margins of profit. So again, the challenges is due to the competition. These are also the challenges. So the in relevant market. So let's say that I have a miscellaneous store in South Delhi. So the relevant market for me would be all the miscellaneous stores which are operating in South Delhi. They would act as as a as a competition to my business, right? So the challenges faced due to competition is also a challenge. Industry specific challenges such as disrupted availability of raw materials. Many raw materials are highly dependent on industries, right? So if such specific industries are not working properly or not functioning on day-to-day basis, those raw materials are not available in 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 a way in which you could have just gone and gotten that raw material earlier. So the disruption in availability of raw materials can happen due to a lot of reasons, right? So in COVID, we saw a lot of workforce not being available, and for that reason, many industries were not functioning. So these are all the challenges, right? So we always have to make sure that these challenges are considered, are taken into account, and we have always something or the other to make sure that these challenges does not act as an impediment in running our businesses. So let's say that we have competitive rates with minimal margins. We do competitive rates with minimal margins of profit in order to remain in the businesses even after there is a lot of competition in the relevant market. What it does is it reduces your margin of profit, right? So in my opinion, the best way to deal with these issues are to have a lot of options. So when we talk of competitions, when we talk of competition, the best way to deal with competition is to have a lot of options. That is true for the consumers also, and that is true for the businesses also. So when we say we should have a lot of options, I mean to say that the relevant market should not be specific to the territory, right? So if we are operating in South Delhi as a miscellaneous store, so let's say we we shall strive to increase our relevant market. So let's say you start delivering those goods online, or start delivering those goods with vendor partners, and you not only deliver those goods to South Delhi, but also to other districts as well. So now you have increased your relevant market area, right? And now if you have gone online, then you have increased your market area significantly. So now Delhi is not your Delhi is not just Delhi is not your relevant market. The whole India can be your relevant market if you could effectively deliver such goods in competitive rates with minimal margins. So there are many things that you can do to increase your accessibility, to increase your availability in front of consumers, so that the competition issues are taken care of, right? Now, going forward, no bargaining power with buyers to negotiate terms accordingly, market share reductions, alternative materials or services against that of MSMEs, etc. So no bargaining power. When we say that we enter into transactions with large corporate houses, we have often seen that they have boilerplate contracts. Now, we do not have a lot of bargaining power. We cannot negotiate on terms and conditions with, let's say, if Reliance comes and say that we want some goods from a MSME. So now that MSME does not have a lot of bargaining power to negotiate the terms with Reliance, because Reliance is a huge corporate house, right? So the bargaining power vests with Reliance in these circumstances, and they would generally come up with a boilerplate contract, which you would have to agree anyhow. So now the one thing which helps the MSME in this case is the rule of contra preferentum. It has been decided that whenever such boilerplate contract, whenever the issues, whenever there is a dispute out of such boilerplate contracts, the interpretation, if there are two interpretations, let's say, coming out of those boilerplate contracts, and what one is beneficial to the MSME and the other is beneficial to the Reliance, which has drawn that contract, which has drafted that contract. So the rule of contra preferentum says that the interpretation, whenever there is two interpretation, the interpretation which is beneficial to the party who had less bargaining power in the transaction would be afforded. So whenever there exists a circumstance when two interpretations is possible, then the interpretation which would be beneficial to MSME would be considered, and not the interpretation which would be beneficial to Reliance, because the Reliance was the party who has drafted the contract. So the rule of contra preferentum is helpful to the MSMEs in these circumstances. And going forward, ineffective correspondences during a transaction, lack of recorded communication between parties reserving the right to claim liquidated damages, if any, lack of acknowledgement from the buyer regarding unequivocal acceptance, etc. So in ineffective correspondences during a transaction, so we have to really be adept with our communications whenever we are entering into transaction, or whenever we are doing businesses with the other parties. So let's say whenever we are not getting timely payments, we have to communicate, we have to write a mail, we have to write letters, or any communication to say that you have to pay this much amount by this date, and if you not pay this much of amount, we are we would be entitled to claim liquidated damages, or to claim interest, is which is uh, which is provided under the MSMED Act. So those communications become very much important in proving your claim, right? In pursuing your claim before any neutral party or any courts, or any in any alternate dispute resolution mechanism, because those communications shows that we have been we have been pursuing the other party for our genuine claims. It shows that we have been uh, trying hard for our claims, and those transactions also, the transactions and the communications when taken together forms a story, right? So it becomes quite hard for the other party to just deny the transaction, or to just deny uh, a condition or term which was already recorded, or which was already communicated via mail, right? So these communications are very much important. We have to be adept with these communications. I've seen a lot of times the other party says that we are terminating the contract, we do not want to work with you. So and in these circumstances, I've seen the MSMEs doing nothing. So in these circumstances, you have to communicate your interest, and you have to communicate your interest to the other party, right? Saying that uh you cannot terminate it just like that, or such termination is illegal, and is not complied with the terms and conditions which are agreed between the parties. So and the term the termination is not acceptable to you. So these communications would be the first would be your first line of defense, right? The first arguments of of what we want to say should come in the communications, what we have already uh, what we have already gone into whilst having the transaction with the other party, right? So these communication becomes evidences, and it has some evidentiary value for the court to consider and to reach upon a conclusion, right? So these communications are very much important, and it has to be always we always have to be adept with such communication, and you have to take care, you have to see and you have to supervise such communications are made on a timely basis and in an effective manner, so that we do not have problems in recovering our dispute, or in resolving our dispute or recovering our delayed payments, right? Difficulty in realizing payments from via cash transactions, etc. So the cash transaction is another reason why these delayed payments happen, because the cash transactions do not have any record, right? So whenever we are receiving cash transactions, always make sure that you receive, or you receive some undertaking, or you receive some receipt out of it. It should not be a cash transactions done just to evade taxes. So now if you want to evade taxes by doing cash transactions, I'm really sorry, by doing cash transactions, but such cash transactions cannot be proved before the court, because those transactions don't have any evidentiary value or any record or any documentations. So now if any breach, let's say a possible breach is happened, so just because we have done this cash transaction and there is no record or there is no documentation of those transactions, we cannot go before the court saying that, look, we have received this much in cash, and this much amount is still left, because the government and the court cannot help us when we already are faulted on our part. So let's say when we are evading tax, we cannot go and say that this was a transaction we entered into, because if that was a transaction we entered into, we had to pay certain amount of tax on the amounts that we received as consideration. So always we have to think that for evading tax, it is always a minimal amount that we prefer evading, but whenever such breach happens, the whole transactions get into question, right? So the whole transaction of 1 crore or 2 crore, or let's say 10 crore of rupees would get into question just because you wanted to evade on 10 or 15 thousands of tax. So always be clear in these circumstances that evading of taxes just because you do not want to pay a minimal amount can result in disastrous situation where your transactions can come into question. The whole transaction can come into question, and just because you are evading that 15,000 rupees of tax, you won't be able to prove that you are doing a huge amount of transaction with the other party, which was of around 2 crores or 3 crores, which was a significantly higher amount than the tax you wanted to evade. So I just wanted to say this, that a lot of MSMEs are doing it, and I've seen this firsthand, that they do cash transactions because they do not want to pay taxes, and a lot of times their transactions go into question, and after that they are helpless. They just cannot do anything. They just say that we didn't want to pay taxes, and so the transactions were not recorded, and now they have denied to pay us the whole amount. Now what we can do? So in those circumstances, it is very difficult for you to recover your amount, and it will be very difficult for you to resolve your disputes too. So we have to take this into consideration, and that's all. We'll move to the next slide. So the consequential effects due to these challenges. So the lack of financial resources. So whenever the payments are delayed or defaulted or not made on timely basis, the MSME Act suffers from a lack of financial resources, right? So it is it is it is a fact that we already know that every businesses require some kind of monetary consideration to run on a daily basis, right? So you have to have financial resources, all the other resources like manpower or equipment or plant or machinery, or any other resources to in order to keep your businesses running, right? So whenever these delayed payment un or delayed payment or defaulted payment, we face delayed payment issues or default payment issues, the MSMEs the consequential effect of that is the lack of financial resources to MSMEs. So they are not able to manage the businesses effectively. They are not able to run their businesses effectively on a daily basis because of the financial resources. The second is lost claims due to not having enough evidence and materials on record to prove default. As I said, that these transactions, the recorded documents, the recorded agreements, the recorded communications form evidences which relates to the transaction which we claim that happened, right? And those evidences, when we take into consideration, when courts take into consideration, it forms a story, and basis on that, the court comes onto conclusion that okay, this was the transaction which was happening between the parties based on these communications and the agreements which are entered between the parties. So when we do not have such evidences and materials on record to prove our default, then our claims are lost, our the whole transactions get questioned, and a lot of times it is not successful. You fail in pursuing your claims, or you fail in proving your claim, or proving your transactions altogether. The third is the claim being undervalued. So let's say for evading of taxes, you only showed that this transaction was 50,000 of rupees, rather than it was originally of 1 lakh. What but when MSMEs wanted to evade taxes, we are talking as an example. So if, let's say, that the transaction was of 1 lakh rupees and you just wanted to give taxes on 50,000 rupees. So what you did, you just showed that the transaction was of 50,000 rupees, and this has happened, and the transaction value was only 50,000, not 1 lakh rupees, what it was originally. So now, if the transaction, or if any breach happens, your claim would be undervalued. It would be valued till 50,000 only, because you have shown it to be 50,000, not 1 lakh rupees. So in those cases, as I said, when you evade your taxes, you either lose on whole of your claim, or your or your claim becomes undervalued. So going forward, loss of damages liquidated for breach of terms of the agreement by the buyer. So whenever you're not saying, or whenever you're not communicating effectively, that okay, by not paying us on timely basis, you are also liable to pay us liquidated damages, because it has cascading effect, right? Your delayed payment has resulted into lack of financial resources, not effectively managing our businesses, our production suffered, and the salaries of our workmen or employees suffered. So all of these effects are cascading effect, one delayed just because one payment was delayed by the other party. So what you can do is, you can claim liquidated damages, because these damages were the result of those delayed payments. So the other party is not only liable to make the payment of that delayed payment, it would be also liable to make all those payments, or to make everything good, whatever you suffered just because that payment was delayed by that party. So whenever we are effectively communicating about our rights and claims, eh, out of a transaction, then we should be we should be adept with such communications. Whenever we should be we should be we should be adept that whenever such situations arises, we are adept with communicating with the other party, that see that your payment is delayed, and these are the cascading effects that I'm facing and I'm suffering, and these are the losses that I have suffered just because your payment was delayed. So now the other party's liability doesn't only restrict to the delayed payment, but it also extended to all the liquidated damages that you have faced because of those delayed payment, right? So that is one. And the liquidity crunch in the operation of businesses. So it's similar as lack of financial resources. So the liquidity crunch is nothing but the crunch in the monetary flow of the businesses, just because the payments are not realizing the payments has not been realized on a timely basis from the other party, right? And Next is not able to realize the actual amount is reflecting the turnover generated by the MSME, hampering the expansion and growth of the businesses. So what happens is, whenever we are facing issues of delayed payment, our turnover in our paper is always increasing, but we are not realizing those amounts, right? So on paper, we can say that we have sold such goods of, let's say, value of 10 crore rupees, but if we have not received those 10 crores of rupees, but have only received 5 crores of rupees out of 10 crores of rupees, then our paper turnover is 10 crore, but the realized amount is still 5 crores. And it seriously hampers our growth, right? And we are showing that this year our turnover was 10 crore, but originally we received only 5 crores, and our expansion and everything would be dependent on that 5 crore and not the 10 crore that we have shown in our turnover, right? So that is one consequential effect, is seriously hampering of the businesses, because the turnover generated by the MSMEs are not in consonance with the amounts realized by them originally. And next is minimal profitability. We have already discussed this, that minimal profitability. Uh, what are the situations which give rise to the issues of minimal profitability, where MSMEs have to play on a very minimal profitability because of competition issues, because of a lot of players in the same relevant market area, and to survive in the market, or to effectively run businesses. So there are times when you have to settle for minimal profitability. So that is one consequential effects due to competition. And the other is not taking proper and relevant professional consultations, resulting in losses. So a lot of times I've seen a lot of MSMEs, what they do, they think that they can it's I do not want to I do not want to sound uh, entitled for my knowledge, but I've seen MSMEs getting into legal complications and getting into all kind of complications by themselves. I do not know how they think that they would be able to understand it fully, or they would be able to take it forward effectively. But what they do is, majority of times they make it more messy and make it more complex than it originally was, because what they missed was, they did not consult any professional, neither they consult any chartered accountant, or let's say any company secretary, or an advocate, or any professional for that matter. It should not be any advocate, it can be any professional, uh, depending on the circumstances, but it is highly advisable to go and consult a professional, at least any professional at least, so that you get a reasonable advice, and you do not do anything which you think is good, but originally it is not. So I've seen a lot of time MSMEs agreeing to something which they should not have. And uh, and and a lot of times the negotiations happen in such a way, just because the MSMEs are not consulted with the professionals. They agree for something which is highly not beneficial to them, or let's say it becomes impediment for the MSMEs to agree to those terms, right? So taking proper and relevant professional consultations is really important. The other is ineffective workforce due to lack and wastages of valuable resources. Okay. Yeah. So as I said, that a lack of financial resources also have cascading effect, right? Now, if we do not have finances enough to pay our workforce, or to take care of machinery or equipment, then what it does is it renders our workforce ineffective, right? And all the resources would not be running effectively. So a lot of times some plant and machinery is required timely servicing, or let's say timely management, or timely uh, timely management, or timely attention, which requires some kind of mechanics and some kind of special professionals to look into. Or let's say we have to pay salary for all of our workmen or employees, and just because of the lack of financial resources we have on our part, we are not able to pay our workforce effectively, or to take care of our plant and machinery. So what it does is it renders our workforce and it renders our resources ineffective, right? So this is one consequential effect. The last one is legal troubles due to ignorance or no knowledge of various industry specific mandatory compliances. So a lot of times I've seen that MSMEs just get into business and they do not even try to find out that what are the mandatory compliances of those businesses. Let's say for any food business operators who are operating in any supply chain, who are based in any supply chain relating to the food businesses, they have to mandatory comply with the FSSAI guidelines and the FSSAI rules and regulation acts, the food security acts, and all the food food related legislations, right? So those ignorance or not having enough knowledge results in serious legal troubles, under which a lot of times the owners can get hefty fines or even penalty, or they can even get imprisonment for a period of time. So these various specific industry mandatory guidelines or rules or compliances has to be kept in mind. We have to be considerate, and we have to be attentive enough to find out those mandatory compliances which which are there in the industries you're operating under, and you have to take care of those compliances. We have to comply with those compliances so that your businesses run effectively, and it doesn't close in between. Because I've seen a lot of time when it get into serious legal troubles, a lot of businesses have to eventually close, because these legal troubles have a lot of bearing. For let's say, if you have not complied with some important provisions of food security and safety standards act, then it might happen that the owner and the enterprise are closed, and even the owner is sent to imprisonment, right? Now, coming forward, solutions and way forward to overcome challenges, preventive measures and solutions. Just give me 1 second. So the preventive measures and solutions to be adopted internally in an enterprise. To enter into a written agreement recording the understanding of terms between the parties, duly executed and properly stamped and notarized. Work purchase orders to be raised under such agreement. Work purchase orders to be shared on an electronic medium too, even if a hard copy of the same is raised. Recording each and every transaction, its terms, obligations, applicable interest upon delayed payment, consequences of breach, force majeure, indemnity, dispute resolution clause to notify defect, or damaged goods or services, rectification period, unequivocal acceptance of work purchase orders if no defect, protest, or demur has been pointed out by the buyer. So this is a detailed uh, this is a detailed way on how we should go on about recording or documenting our transactions. So the first and foremost, as I already stated, is to get an agreement, is to enter into a written agreement recording the understanding of terms between the parties. So all the terms which you feel are important in these transactions has to be recorded, and it is in these situations you have to go and a consult a professional, because you as a business provider, you as a business owner cannot think of the complications, cannot think of uh, all the legal complications, all the legal specifications to be taken care of, right? And not only legal, all the taxes, all the taxes, everything which is there to comply as far as taxes are concerned, or anything uh, which requires a consultation from chartered accountants or company secretary, or an advocate. So these are the situations where you have to go and you have to consult such professional that these are the transactions we are entering into these transactions. What could be the important terms and conditions that we can record in these transactions, right? You have to duly execute and properly stamped. Duly execute, like, it has to be signed by the both parties. It has to be stamped, and it has to be notarized also. So these things has to be kept in mind, that after entering into a transaction, it has to be signed by both the parties, it has to be properly stamped, and it has to be notarized. Work and purchase orders to be raised under such agreement. Now, a lot of times what we see that we have we just issue work order and purchase order, and we do not issue any agreements. So work order and purchase order becomes the basic documents for those transactions, and as I already stated, that the work order and purchase order do not have a lot of terms and conditions. They have only minimum basic conditions, right, which are not sufficient for any court or any alternate dispute resolution mechanism for to determine that to determine the actual understanding between the parties, right? Because those terms are too much basic and too much open ended, uh too much common for all the businesses. So it has to be kept in mind that the work order and purchase order are to be generated, or are to be issued under any agreement. So the first thing you do is to form an agreement, and under those agreements you issue work order and purchase orders, right? So the work orders and purchase orders would be governed by the agreement that you have entered into. So the agreement has to be the basic document, uh, the basic document for the transaction, and not the work order and purchase order, right? So that is why it is written that the work order and the purchase order to be raised under such agreements, and it is not advisable to raise purchase orders and work orders separately, without any agreements, right? And yeah, work purchase orders to be shared on an electronic medium too, even if a hard copy of the same is raised. So a lot of times, it is not a uh, very much important thing to be taken consideration, to be taken into account, but it has to be kept in mind that I have seen a lot of times the signature is denied, that the other party says that this is not my signature, I have not signed, and someone on my behalf has signed, and this does not make me liable for the transaction, right? So what you do in those situations is you always make sure that you raise a hard copy of the agreement as well as the soft copy of the agreement. So the party cannot deny the execution of the agreement on both the platforms, right? The party can very well say that this signature is not mine on the hard copy, or this signature, or this signature is not mine. It was signed by somebody else on my behalf. But when it is shared on two profiles simultaneously, then it becomes difficult for the parties to deny it, right? Because it is also shared on its email ID, and it's also shared in hard copy where the signature of that party is present, right? So it is always advisable to always share everything on an electronic medium too, even if a hard copy is shared. So yeah, sorry. Now coming to the important terms and conditions is obligations of the both the parties in transaction, that the MSMEs has to deliver some goods or services the other party has to pay, and how and what all are the other obligations that you want to insert into those agreement, or or in that transaction. It has to be recorded in the uh, obligation head of those agreement, right? And the applicable interest upon delayed payment. So you have to also mention the applicable interest upon delayed payment would be governed by the MSMED Act, which is already given under the MSMED Act, which is 3 times the interest rate notified by the RBI. So you can insert that term. consequences of breach, you have to insert that what would be the consequences of the breach if it happens by any of the parties. So let's say if MSME is breaching on any of the terms of the agreement, or if the buyer is breaching on any of the terms of the agreement, so then what would be the consequences of breach, whether the parties would have to bear for liquidated damages or not. So these are the things that you can insert here under. The force majeure is nothing but the act of God. So these terms are pretty much important in all the transactions. I believe that there are always some situations which are not under our control, and are force of higher higher power. So it generally is not under any of the parties' power to control those situations, right? So whenever those situations happen, the parties are exempted from their obligations and liabilities, right? So the force majeure clause should be there, the indemnification clause should be there, that if any breach is caused by one of the parties, and due to such breach the other party is suffering some losses, then party the party who has breached the agreement would be would be liable to indemnify the other party, right? So all the losses which you have faced due to the breach of the other parties would be indemnified by the party itself, right? So that indemnification clause can be inserted. The dispute resolution clause can be inserted. The dispute resolution clause, uh, that the courts of the certain jurisdiction would have the jurisdiction to deal with the disputes arising out of these transactions, or let's say that any dispute arising out of these transactions would be settled out by conciliation, and if conciliation fails, it would go into arbitration. So all of these things can be inserted into dispute resolution clause. Not to say that even if independent dispute resolution clause exists in any agreement, an MSME is not stopped from approaching MSMED Act to refer the disputes to MSMED Act, and to go into arbitration under MSME and not under the dispute resolution clause of their own agreement. So just because this is statutory arbitration, and it has a notwithstanding clause that 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 supersedes Arbitration and Conciliation Act, and all the other acts which are prior to 2006. So this arbitration, the statutory arbitration, can be referred by the buyer even when dispute resolution clause and a separate dispute resolution clause exists in the agreement. So it does not stop me from going to MSMED and saying that I want to resolve my dispute here, and not by the dispute resolution clause which is mentioned under my agreement, right? Clause to notify defect or damaged goods or services, rectification period, unequivocal acceptance of work purchase orders if no defect, protest, or demur has been pointed out by the buyer. So the rectification clause is, a lot of times I've seen that it is very convenient for the other party to say that the services or the goods which the MSME has delivered was not up to the mark, or we do not accept such good or services. So these rectification clause is nothing but that you are giving some time limit to the MSME, or to the party who are delivering your goods or services, to rectify the defects that you have pointed out, which are not in consonance with the agreement, or which are not in line with the requirements which were mentioned in the agreement for such goods and services, right? So if such goods and services have found to have such defects, or any inconsistencies which shouldn't have, then what the buyer has to do is to give you a rectification time limit. It has to be 10 days, 15 days, or 1 month. And without such rectification time limit, you cannot just go and terminate my contract, and you cannot just say that a breach was caused by the MSME by not delivering the goods or services as was agreed between the parties. And if no defect or demur or inconsistencies is pointed out by the parties, then it has to be it has to be it has to be said it has to be said that that the transaction was accepted, in the buyer has given unequivocal acceptance by the uh, by not pointing out such defects and demur, right? So I'll make it clear for you in simpler terms. So what you say is that in 15 days or in 30 days, if you have any defects or inconsistencies, you can come and you can give us rectification clause of 1 month, under which we will come and will rectify your inconsistencies or any defect that you have pointed out. And if no such defect or inconsistencies have been pointed out in 1 month of period that you have given under the agreement, it has to be said in agreement that if no such defect or inconsistencies is found out within those 30 days, it would be construed and it would be taken as the buyer has accepted it unequivocally, right? So these are all the important terms that you can insert in your agreements for almost all the transactions that you're entering into. Now, being adept with communications, reserving of right to claim damages, if any, receiving acknowledgement of the due amount from the buyer, taking steps to resolve issues before the claims are barred by limitation, follow-ups on delayed payments, balance payments, intimation of applicable interest, not diluting its rights as a party by way of conduct, negotiating and careful of the agreed payment terms, whether advanced at the time of delivery, payment within specified period, less than or equal to 45 days, not more than that. Okay. So what are the solutions and way forward to resolving these disputes and to prevent these disputes, or to say that even if these disputes arises, we would have a fair share of succeeding in those disputes, right? So being adept with communication, as we already discussed, that the communication becomes evidence, and it supposes the transaction that you are claiming happened between the parties, and by giving communication in respect of those transaction, in line of those transaction, would convince the neutral party or would convince the court that such communication gives suggestion to this suggestion, which is the claim of your which is your claim that the transaction happened and the understanding of the parties were this. So all those communications should be in line with what you are seeking from the court or from what you are claiming the understanding of the parties were in the transaction, right? So reserving of right to claim damages, as I already stated, that you can always reserve your right to claim damages by saying that the liability of the buyer is not restricted to pay the amount which is there for which is the consideration for delivery of goods or services, but also for all the cascading effects, for all the cascading losses that the MSME would suffer just because the payment is delayed, right? So all those reserving of rights should be there. It should be adept, it should be quick, that uh, like whenever you started suffering losses, that you're not able to pay your workmen or your employees the salary because your payment is delayed by one vendor. So what you say is, what you do is you are quick, and you quickly turn around to that vendor saying, reserving your right, that see that I'm not able to make these payments to my employers or to my workmen, just because I haven't received the payments due from you, and due to which my businesses in daily course are affected, and are going in losses. So all those losses you reserve to claim from that party who has delayed your payment, and because of which all these cascading effects happened, right? So these are reserving of rights. So you have to be quick in these situations. You have to say that, okay, we reserve the right to claim this much of amount because we believe that this loss was suffered due to your delayed payment, or to due to your actions of any sort. It might be of delayed payment, or it might be of anything else. And taking steps to resolve issues before the claims are barred by limitation. So you always have to take care of the limitation period, which operates on on almost all claims or of civil nature. It does not it do not apply on criminal uh, actions, but it does apply on civil actions, and they are barred by limitations. So you'll always have to take into account the relevant limitation period for your claim, and you always have to take it take it into account for you to resolve your issues. Like, you cannot take your issues to the court after it is barred by limitation. So limitation is a limit of time period under which you can go and you can pursue your claim, under which you can go and you can go before the court or any alternate dispute resolution mechanism to pursue your claim. After the limitation period, your claim does not die per se, but your right to pursue that claim is extinguished, right? So your right to pursue those claims are not longer available to you. So that is the consequential effect if you are not wary of the limitation period. Follow-ups on delayed payments, as I have already stated, and I do not think that it requires substantiation, that we have to keep following up on our delayed payment. It shows that we are uh, we are facing some difficulties for the payments, and it also shows our seriousness for those delayed payments, right? Balance payments, intimation of the applicable interest. We have to intimate that the applicable interest is 3 times the RBI notified interest, just because you are MSME, and you have to tell it to the other party. You have to remind it to the other party every time, so that the applicable interest is so that they have it in mind that they will have to suffer a lot, because if they are not paying the amount to you on timely basis. So all of these intimations are very much helpful in realizing your payment on a timely basis, right? So not diluting its rights as a party by way of conduct, negotiating and careful of the agreed payment terms, whether advanced at the time of delivery, payment within the specified period. So we always have to take care of the payment terms. Uh, we should take we should look into that the payment terms are advanced or at the time of delivery, or within the 45 days, which is already specified in the MSMED Act. So the payment terms more than of 45 days is not advisable, because the 45 days is already given under the MSMED Act. So I do not know of any reasons that why MSME would give more than 45 days to any buyer or any other party. So it always has to be kept in mind that your payment terms should not exceed 45 days. And if you are exceeding it after 45 days, and then generally what happens is that your your rights your rights to claim those interests are diluted, because you already have extended the credit period of more than 45 days, right? So a lot of time it is construed by the court that you're not very much you're not very much serious about the interest claim of the amount, right? So it is always necessary for you to, you know, remind the other party that these are the liquidated damages that you have reserved your rights for, and these are the interest on the amount that you have reserved your rights for. And if you're exceeding it to after 45 days, then a lot of times, as I've said, it is construed that you're not serious about the interest component of your amount, because you have already extended beyond 45 days. Now going forward. Yeah. So taking proper consultations from relevant professionals to have a legal secretarial audit, and verifying the industry specific mandatory requirements, compliances under different statutes, incorporating effective ways to execute agreements, communications, follow-ups, receiving acknowledgement against purchase, work orders, and delayed payments. So all of these you have to take into consideration. You have to take proper consideration from all relevant professionals to have a legal secretarial audit. So, and verifying the industry specific mandatory requirement compliances under different statutes. So as I already discussed and as I already stated, that you might be operating in food businesses, or you might be operating in fashion industry, or you might be operating in dairy industry, let's say. So all the industry specific requirements, all these industry specific mandatory guidelines or rules or regulations or statutes, you have to take in take into consideration, and you have to comply with all of them. And yeah, the effective ways to execute agreements, communications, follow-ups, receiving acknowledgement against purchase, work orders, and delayed payments. So you have to be effective in ways to execute agreements. The communications, you have to do effective communications. You have to follow up for the delayed payment, for receiving delayed payments, for your pending delayed payments. And you also has to take into consideration that you receive acknowledgement after after you have delivered some goods, or you have delivered some services against some purchase order or work order, right? So these acknowledgements are also necessary. So all of these things you have to take into consideration. Second part is to carefully assess damage clauses in the agreement, computation of claims under various heads such as price escalation, overhead charges, machinery, workforce entitlement charges, etc. So a lot of times I have seen that the MSME, what they do is they only claim what was the transaction value, right? As I've already stated, that a lot of times you can claim liquidated damages that a lot of times also exceeds your amount which was originally the pending amount. So a lot of time the liquidated damages and the other charges which you have suffered, which you have suffered a loss in. Yeah, so a lot of times what I have seen, I'm really very sorry, a lot of times what I've seen, that your original claim is significantly lower than the liquidated damages and all the other claims that you can have in those transactions, right? So a lot of times I've seen that, let's say if any construction is going on, and the transaction value was of 2 crore rupees to construct a building, and now you have constructed a building, and you have only received 1.5 lakh of rupees, and 50 lakhs are pending. So what I've seen, that a lot of times that total claim of yours would be more than 50 lakhs from the original claim, just because a lot of other claim and damages you can demand from the other parties, right? So what are these damages? The price escalation, overhead charges, the machinery and workforce idlement charges. So if if the payments are not being made on a timely basis, a lot of times what happens is the machinery and your workforce are idle for a long period of time, and what happens is the prices are increased when the term of the contract exceeds, and the work is not completed on those terms. So all of these claims also can be demanded in addition to what was already due from the other party. And what I wanted to say is that you always have to carefully assess all the possibilities under which you can claim damages from, or under which you can claim other charges from, in addition to what is already due, and what was already originally due from the other party, right? To be well versed with all the schemes, benefit policies by the government affecting MSMEs. So you have to continuously be well versed with all the schemes, benefits, and policies of the government to safeguard the interest of the businesses, creating strategic assets, raising proper invoices with GST and UAN, PAN, and be updated with the statutory tax and other filings. So you also have to take care of all the statutory filings. If you're a company, there are certain forms that you have to fill on a daily basis to MCA, or some of the tax filings, some of the tax forms filings you have to take care of. So uh, you always take care of these compliances, that they are met regularly, and it's being and and it's being done in the interest of the businesses, right? Because the non-compliances of these specific mandatory requirements have uh, a lot of consequential effect, right? And to create strategic assets, I mean, is to create trademarks, or to create intellectual property rights, or to create any strategic assets, accordingly your business, right? And further, to create outreach with online presence, new clients, buyers, proper and reasonable pricing, strategic business decisions, proper invoicing, not continuing with the supply of services in cases of delayed payments. So, as we already stated, to out to create outreach with online presence, you overwhelmingly extend your market area, relevant market area, and by doing so, you can bring down a competition issue uh, a little bit down for yourself, because your market area is extended now. Now you can have a larger profit margin for some of the market area, and the online presence is one of the ways to do it. And new clients and buyers. So only having a certain number of buyers or clients is always not advisable. So it's always advisable to have a pool of clients and buyers. So if you lose out on one or two clients or buyers, let's say, you do not have, like, it's not a situation where you do not have any left, right? So when you have a pool of clients and buyers, even if four or five of buyers or four or five of clients do not do not go through in one transaction, you'd be able to pick and choose the best offer, or the best negotiation, or the best offer for yourself, when you have a lot of options to choose from, right? So proper and reasonable pricing, strategic business decisions, proper invoicings, we have already discussed all of these. And these things are very much important. And to have strategic business decisions, as I already stated, whether to extend credit period to some party or not, whether proper and reasonable pricing is being made in relevant market area or not, or if your market area is extended, then reasonable pricing can be can vary, right? So in an area where you have a lot of presence, and where you have a lot of clients, can have a bit of slighter higher payment than an area where you have a lot of competition and not a lot of buyers, right? So you understand, right, that you have to strategically decide what should be done and what should not be done. And the proper invoicing is necessary for all the other businesses, every businesses. And being adept with follow-ups or payments, we have already discussed this a lot of times. Acquiring a post-dated check for the bill raised as a security measure to avoid delayed payment. So what do we do is, we sometimes take a post-dated check. So let's say if 3 months after from now a transaction is being completed, and the payment terms are after 3 months. So when or let's say every month. So what you do is that you already take post-dated checks for all those payment terms, which which would come eventually. So what you do is, you demand post-dated checks for all those payments, which would in future come to the other party, which would come on the other party on a future date. So what you do is to acquire post-dated checks of those future dates at the time of entering into transaction, as a mode of security. So, like, at the time of payment term, so let's suppose the other party is not making payments. What you can do is that you can take that post-dated check, and you can go and you can render it to the bank by and you can render it to the bank. And if the party has the enough funds, then it would be credited to your account. And if not, if the other party has not the enough funds, then it would be the check would be bounced, and you would have another recourse to demand the payment from the other parties, not restricted to only civil liability, but also criminal liability. So this is a very effective way under which businesses are taking post-dated checks as a mean to safeguard their payment terms, or to safeguard their payments, right? Because if the payment is not made on the date on which it should have been made, what you can do is that you can produce these checks to the banks that you have already received from the other party. Now we'll come to the external solution, resolution of disputes, litigation, ADR and ODR. Recourses from MSMEFC as per the provisions of MSMED Act. So what we can do is that we can take our recourse under the Micro, Small, Medium Enterprises Development Act. Proceedings under Section 138 of the Negotiable Instruments Act. As I said, that post-dated checks, when you produce those checks to the banks, it is well and good if the amount is credited to your account, and if the check is bounced, then the proceedings under Section 138 of the Negotiable Instrument Act is operated, and you can proceed under the Section 138 of the NIA Act. The third is Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code of 2016. You can have recourse under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code as well. The fourth one is Alternative Dispute Resolution. So it is the dispute resolution. It is same for the recourse under the MSMEFC also. So the both of the Alternative Dispute Resolution would follow Arbitration and Conciliation Act only. And the last is civil suits for recovery of money. That is the classic way of recovering of money, and the summary suits, summary judgments, Civil Procedure Code and Commercial Codes Act. So these are all the external solutions under which we can take recourse if situations of delayed payment arises. So just give me 2 minutes. I'll come to the next slide. So the reference to a dispute to MSMEFC, relevant and important provisions of MSMED Act. So Section 7 is classification of enterprises. We have already discussed how the classification is given under the MSMED Act. Section 9 is measures for promotion and development. What all are the measures that can be adopted for promotion and development of MSMEs? Section 10 is credit facilities that the government can provide for MSMEs. Section 11 is procurement preference policy. All the procurement preference policies under the tenders and all the bid documents that the government floats on public domain. So there is some preference policy for MSMEs under all of those tenders, and in most of those tenders. So those are the Section 11 talks about that the procurement preference policy under the government tenders or other tenders. Section 12 is the funds that the government can appropriate. The Section 13 is grants by the central government. Section 14 is administration and utilization of such funds. Section 15 is important, liability of buyer to make payments. So Section 15 says the buyer has the liability to make payment to the supplier for the delivery of goods or services. Section 16 is date from which and rate at which the interest is payable. So after 45 days, the credit period of 45 days is given under the section, and it says that after 45 days, after the delivery of goods or services is done, after 45 days, the interest would be chargeable, and the interest would be the 3 times rate of the notified rate of the RBI, right? Which is somewhere between 18 or 18.5% as of now. Section 18 is reference to MSEFC. So all the disputes can be referred to MSEFC, Micro Small Enterprises Facilitation Council, which can conduct conciliation and arbitration by itself, or it can refer it to the other any other center which does conciliation and arbitration. So in Delhi, they refer it to Delhi Arbitration Center, and in most of the state, they do it by themselves. Section 19, application for setting aside decree, award, or order. So any application for setting aside the decree which has been passed by the MSEFC or award or order by the other party has to be made under Section 19. But the most interesting part of the Section 19 is that you have to deposit 75% of the amount of the decree in order to challenge that decree further. So let's say if MSEFC has decided and given a decree of 50 lakh to it said that you have to pay 50 lakh to the supplier of goods just because you have not paid him the amount, then and if you want as a buyer to challenge that order, So in order to challenge that order, you have to submit 75% of the 50 lakh of rupees to the the MSEFC or to the appellate authority before you go and appeal appeal that decision, decree, or order, right? And section 24, as I said, that it has an overriding effect on all the statutes which are enacted prior to 2006. So when I say overriding effect, I say that whenever there is any inconsistency between any act, let's say between MSMED Act or Arbitration and Conciliation Act, the MSMED Act would supersede the Arbitration and Conciliation Act, because Arbitration and Conciliation Act was enacted in 1996 and this was in 2006. Recourse after dishonoring of checks. So as I already stated, section 138, dishonor of checks for the reasons of insufficient funds in the account, is applicable. Section 139 is presumption in the favor of the holder. So it is always presumed that the check, the holder of the check is accepted the check in lieu of the liability of the other party. So it is always presumed that the other party has presented the check to this party in lieu of its liability, to extinguish its liability, right? The section 142 is cognizance of offenses. It is taken care of by the Metropolitan Magistrate or GMFC. The first it goes into GMFC or Metropolitan Magistrate. The mandatory notice has to be given for 30 days, and action can be taken against both the enterprises and signatory of the dishonored check. So let's say any MD is signing on behalf of the company a check. So the enterprise would also be equally liable, and simultaneously the MD would also be liable for the dishonored check, right? And I'm trying to cover all of this in a quicker manner so that we do not exceed the time again. And if you miss out on something, that you can always go on YouTube and you can refer to our earlier webinars on the same topic. It is in more detailed manner, so I'll just cover it. I'll skim it through so that you can have this idea, and for better understanding, you can always go to our YouTube channel, where we have already a lot of webinar uploaded for you to go and visit. So IBC, we have to take into consideration that not all the claims can be pursued under IBC. For the claims has to be above 1 crore. So the basic point to pursue claims in IBC is that your claims should be higher than 1 crore. Any claims which are lower than 1 crore cannot be pursued under IBC. And if your claim is higher than 1 crore, then you can file an application under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. So most of the times, in all of the times, the suppliers and the goods services providers, the delivery of goods or the services providers are operational creditors, and in section 8 they have to give a notice to the corporate debtor demanding their payments, and after 10 days from issuing that notice, you can file an application under section 9 for CIRP. And section 14 is moratorium. So when you file a section, when you file for CIRP and it is admitted, the insolvency application is admitted, then all the other proceeding is stayed, right? So all the other proceeding except insolvency and bankruptcy code is stayed. So your arbitration, your proceedings under MSME, whatever it is all stayed, and you are again required to come under IBC to get your dues cleared, right? So it has the notwithstanding effect, overriding effect over MSMED Act also, because this was in 2016, the MSME Act was 2006. The section 21 is committee of creditors. So the committee of creditors are generally financial creditors. They are not of operational creditors, and that is one reason why it is not very much advisable for operational creditors to take refuge under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, because the committee of creditors decide on what offers they should accept from the resolution, what offers they should accept as a resolution plan, as a best way to go forward for that company. So in majority of the cases, the committee of creditors only take care of their interest, and I've seen a lot of cases when they have received large haircuts, like they do not think much of the operational creditors dues, because the operational creditors do not form the part of COC anyway. So uh, so the you have to take care that you have to take into consideration that whether it is a good decision to go into insolvency and bankruptcy court, because a lot of times when you know that the the management of the company do not want the company to be taken out of their hands. So what they would do is to promptly pay your delayed payment, or any issues of delayed payment. But when it actually goes into CIRP, then the operational creditor has a little to do with all the proceedings happening there under, and it is all left on the committee of creditors to decide for the benefit of operational creditors. And in a lot of the cases, they have not realized the full amount. And I've seen that in most of the cases, they have not even realized 10% of the whole amount, 10 to 15% of the whole amount, what was actually due. So it has to be explained in a very better manner. But this is the overview and crux, that how insolvency and bankruptcy code is not a very suitable way to go into for the operational creditors, at least, and if they do not have a lot of a huge amount pending. So for lesser amounts, and for you know uh, for operational creditors, it is not a very viable solution. But it it is sometimes it acts as a strong arm tactics to receive money from a company, because if CIRP goes through and CIRP application is admitted, then the management of the company is suspended, and the interim resolution professional is appointed as a board of director of the company. So no board of director of the company wants that their company is taken out of their hands. So if they would be able to make those payments, they would be making those payments. But if they would not be able to make those payments, then the whole fate of the operational creditors lies in the hands of the committee of creditors. The resolution by way of alternate dispute resolution, online dispute resolution, arbitration and conciliation act. The section 19 is interim measures, etc. by the courts. So for any interim measures, what we can do is we can file an application in section 9 before the courts, or we can file the application in section 17 before the arbitral tribunal. So we have to decide accordingly what application is what application is appropriate and affordable in given circumstances. And it is necessary to always consult a professional to determine these situations, right? Section 11 is appointment of arbitrator. So under this section, the arbitrator is appointed. Arbitrator is always in odd number. It has to be either one in number or three in number, so that so that the majority of decision would prevail. So there is no scope of tying of the decision, right? And section 16 is competence of arbitral tribunal to rule on its own jurisdiction. So any issues of limitation, any issues of jurisdictional issues is also it can also be decided by the arbitral tribunal itself, and that is provided under section 16. Section 17, as I already stated, that the interim measures which can be filed before the arbitral tribunal. Section 34 is obviously the application for setting aside an arbitral award. And if we'd go in detail of these sections, it would take another 2 hours for me to explain it to you, that what are all the significance of all these provisions. And just to give you a overview and and a brief idea of how it works, I've included these provisions, and I would strongly advise you to refer to our other webinars for have a to for having a better and clearer understanding. Seat, venue, and jurisdiction are these things which you have to very much be careful of, that these things are properly drafted and properly specified. The arbitrability of the disputes, so not all the disputes are arbitrable. So taxation disputes and rent disputes, I've seen a lot of times, are not arbitrable. And so it is it is important to see what disputes comes under the scope of arbitrability and what disputes are out of the scope of arbitrability. The appointment of arbitrator and ad hoc arbitrations. These are all the way in which the appointment of arbitrator and under ad hoc arbitrations are made. In a lot of government contracts, I have seen that they write down that our own officer would act as an arbitrator. So that is not a very good term in the eyes of law. And when we say that that cannot be enforced under law, that you can always move in section 11 denying that I do not accept the unilateral appointment of arbitrator from your side, and you also have the equal say in appointing arbitrator, right? So that is not a good term in law, so you always have to be careful about these terms, right? Civil suit for recovery, that is under CPC. That is nothing but you move a suit, you institute a suit, that is under order 4. In order 37 is summary suits. The summary suits is nothing but uh, it's those suits in which you feel the other parties has no material defense. So when you move a summary suit, the other party is given notice. The court gives the notice to the other party, asking them that why they should be heard, why the right to defend should be provided to that party at all. Then the other party has to come and has to prove before the court that there exist a lot of defenses or substantial defenses by which he can or it can defend itself in the present dispute, or if he cannot provide with such reasons or with such grounds, then the summary suit moves ex parte. Then there is no right to defend available for the other party, and it would be decreed ex parte. And the benefits and shortcomings of the recourses under CPC, that it is litigation after all. And the summary suits very seldomly are taken forward as summary suits, and if they fail, they convert into the normal suits. So a lot of times the other party is given the opportunity to right to defend, because it is uh, only in exceptional cases that you can file an application and you can prove that the other party has no virtual defense at all. And if that is the case, the summary suit becomes a very good recourse to opt for in CPC. And jurisdiction is given under section 18. So how the courts how the jurisdiction is to be determined in any given circumstances. The summary suits under CPC, the order 37 defines summary suits, procedure and things to remember. Jurisdiction, as I already stated, is 16 to 20 of the IPC. So the normal suit for recovery is as I already stated, it is litigation after all. So it takes a lot of time, and it goes for years and years to come, like 2 or 3 years minimum, or let's say 1 or 2 years. But it is not the same for summary suits. Summary suits are determined within a specified period of time, because the right to defend is not provided to the other party, and if the other party convinces the court that there exist certain defenses through which he can defend himself, then the summary suits convert into the normal suits in CPC. In the claims of higher than 3 lakhs comes under the Commercial Courts Act 2013, which has been drafted in 2013 as an ancillary to CPC for the disputes which are commercial in nature. So any disputes involving more than 3 lakhs of rupees comes under the Commercial Courts Act jurisdiction now. And there are summary judgments which are similar provisions of summary suits as under CPC. The summary judgments are under the Commercial Courts Act in order 13A. Lastly, the quick tips and suggestions that we already stated, that we'll give you in last of our webinar, is always mention applicable GSTIN, UAN, PAN numbers on invoice, registered office with addresses of both buyer and MSME, amount, payment terms, interest applicable, correspondence, defect quality, clause and way of raising such defect, default, rectification process, reference to the parent agreement, etc. So all those things that we have talked about, you have to take take that into account. You have to carefully comply with all of those all of those things, like mentioning your GSTIN, UAN, PAN numbers, and your MSME registration, which says that, which at least shows the other party, if there is no agreement, at least it is enough to show that the other party always had the idea that they are entering a transaction or they are doing a business with the MSME, and they are of the knowledge that if they delay the payment, they'll have to bear 3 times the interest charges of notified rate of RBI. So those are the situations where where it is beneficial and necessary to mention all of this, and when it comes handy to you, because it is always necessary to mention all of these things in your invoice, but in sometimes it also acts as a beneficial way of proving things, because the other party can always deny in lack of an agreement that they didn't know that they are entering a transaction with a MSME, let's say. So by writing MSME registration on your invoices, you're in a way saying to the other party that, look, I'm an MSME registered entity, and these are the all the provisions which are applicable for MSMEs are also applicable for me. So all of those things are necessarily have to be mentioned in your invoice. Invoices communication has to be recorded, managed, online way of communication. Always communicate. That we have already discussed. Always have a pre-estimate of an amount which can be claimed as damages in case of delayed payments. So you always have to like it is advisable to, let's say, pre-estimate of an amount of whenever any breach is caused. So let's say you write in an agreement that whenever such breach of, let's say, of delayed payment is caused, then a pre-estimate of amount is already stated in your agreement that this is the amount which we believe would suffer, would the parties suffer as a loss if the payments are not made on timely basis. So what you do is estimate you pre-estimate a loss that can happen in situations of delayed payment, and you write those amount in an agreement, so that whenever such delayed payment occurs, the amount of liquidated damages would be capped at the amount you have mentioned in the agreement. So it also acts as a limited liability concept, and it also acts as a certain amount that you can receive in case of breach of agreement, right? Always try to settle amicably and basis on the facts, situations, and circumstances. Amount in each case, the recourses has to be accordingly decided. I'm really sorry. Always try to settle amicably. That it is very much important that we try and settle the disputes amicably and through talks, because if we enter into, let's say, alternate dispute resolution or litigation also, then there are a lot of cost and time involved, and it always results in 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 like wastage of your resources, be it monetary, be it time resources, because you'll have to get a lot of professionals, you'll have to get advocates, you'll have to submit court fee, or let's say arbitrators fee or conciliators fee. So it comes with a lot of monetary obligations, time obligations, if you want to go into litigation, or let's say alternate dispute resolution rather than amicable settlement. Then yeah, so amicable settlement is always the preferred way to go to, rather than the alternate dispute resolution or litigation. Always try to safeguard interest by registering trademark designs, mandatory compliances, and update statutory filings. So always safeguard your interest, always create strategic assets of trademarks, designs, always take care of the mandatory compliances and update statutory filings. So thank you so much. I am done here, I guess. Yeah.
थैंक यू सो मच सर, बहुत
Thank you.
अच्छा वेबिनार रहा आज का
Thank you so much. Thank you
और
so much.
काफी इंफॉर्मेटिव रहा। सर जल्दी से हम क्वेश्चंस को कवर अप कर लेते हैं। मैं सभी
Sure, sure.
अटेंडीज से कहना चाहूंगी कि आप अपने हैंड रेज कर लीजिए, जिसको भी कोई क्वेश्चन है सर से मैं डायरेक्टली बात करा दूंगी। अभी सर यस दीपक जी, आप अपना क्वेश्चन पूछ सकते हैं सर से।
गुड इवनिंग सभी को।
गुड
गुड
इवनिंग
इवनिंग,
सर।
गुड इवनिंग।
सर मुझे ये पूछना है कि अगर सपोज हमारा कुछ आउटस्टैंडिंग एक कंपनी की तरफ रहता है और काफ़ी फॉलोअप्स, मेल फॉलोअप्स और वर्बली फॉलोअप्स देने के बाद भी कंपनी अगर हमको पे नहीं कर रही है, वो बता रही है कि हम लोग लॉस में है या हम लोग को ऊपर से नहीं आ रहे, तो उस केस में अगर हम एमएसएमई के थ्रू उसको कंप्लेंट करते हैं तो क्या वो लोग हमें हमारा पूरा आउटस्टैंडिंग पे करेंगे या फिर वो कहेंगे कि कुछ सेटलमेंट करो या फिर उसमें से कुछ मीडियम वे निकलेगा? थोड़ा गाइड करिए ना।
श्योर श्योर श्योर। देखिए, अगर आप एमएसएमई में जाते हैं तो एमएसएमई का मैं आपको टोटल प्रोसीजर बता देता हूँ कि क्या होता है। आप एक केस फाइल करते हैं एमएसएमई में, आप रेफरेंस करते हैं एप्लीकेशन का कि मेरा इतना इतना क्लेम है, ये डॉक्यूमेंट्स थे, ये सब हमारी अंडरस्टैंडिंग थी। आपके जो भी रिलेवेंट डॉक्यूमेंट्स है आप अपना क्लेम के साथ वहां पे फाइल करते हैं। उसके बाद वो लोग क्या करते हैं, वो आप दोनों पार्टीज को बुलाते हैं एक बार बात करने के लिए, कंसिलिएशन उसको कहते हैं। तो कंसिलिएशन में आप दोनों ट्राई करते हैं टू सेटल इट एमिकेबली, कि अगर कोई मिडिल वे निकल पाता है तो जो आप दोनों को ही एक्सेप्टेड होगा। तो इफ यू गाइज अग्री, अगर दोनों पार्टी अग्री करती हैं कोई एक मिडिल वे में या फिर कोई एक सेटलमेंट पे आ जाती हैं, देन वेल एंड गुड, दी कंसिलिएशन सक्सेसफुल हो जाती है। आपके टर्म्स पे, आप दोनों के टर्म्स एंड अंडरस्टैंडिंग पे एक कंसेंट डिक्री आ जाती है, जो कि दोनों पे, मतलब कि दोनों पे इन्फोर्सेबल होगी। बट इफ कंसिलिएशन फेल्स, देन व्हाट यू डू, अगर वो बोल रहे हैं कि मैं आपको आधा ही पैसा दूंगा, आपके आधे पैसे मैं दे ही नहीं पाऊंगा, तो आई डोंट थिंक ऑफ एनी रीजन कि वाई यू वुड अग्री टू दैट कंसिलिएशन। तो आप क्या कहेंगे कि मुझे ये सेटलमेंट मंजूर नहीं है, आई गो फॉर आर्बिट्रेशन। तो अगर कंसिलिएशन फेल होती है तो वो आर्बिट्रेशन में चला जाता है। आर्बिट्रेशन में जाने पे वो वैसे ही एक न्यूट्रल पार्टी अपॉइंट होता है, और जैसे कोर्ट में प्रोसीडिंग्स होती हैं वैसी ही होती हैं, जस्ट उसमें प्रोसीजर्स का कोई वो नहीं होता है। तो आप अपना क्लेम रखते हैं, दूसरी पार्टी अपना डिफेंस रखती है, अगर उनको कोई अपना काउंटर क्लेम रखना है तो वो काउंटर क्लेम रखते हैं, आप दोनों अपना आर्ग्यूमेंट्स, अपने एविडेंसेस प्रेजेंट करते हैं, और फिर जो न्यूट्रल पार्टी है वो बेसिस ऑन दी डॉक्यूमेंट्स, एविडेंसेस एंड एवरीथिंग डिसाइड्स एंड पासेस अ डिक्री। तो अगर आपके पास सारे डॉक्यूमेंट्स हैं, आपका इतना क्लेम निकलता ही है, आप उसको प्रूव कर सकते हैं, तो देयर इज नो रीजन कि जो आर्बिट्रल ट्रिब्यूनल है या फिर एमएससीएफसी है वो आपको उस अवार्ड, उतने उतने अमाउंट का अवार्ड पास न करे आपके लिए। फिर
सर
वो अवार्ड लेके आप उसको एग्जीक्यूट कराएंगे।
ओके, इसको पकड़ के और क्वेश्चन था कि अगर एमएसएमई में हमने केस डाला है, बराबर, और
हम्म।
डिस्कशन चल रहा है, बट क्या फिर इसके बाद में कोर्ट में जाने की या फिर कंज्यूमर कोर्ट में जाने की भी जरूरत है क्या?
कंज्यूमर कोर्ट में?
जी, कंज्यूमर कोर्ट मतलब एक हम जो जुडिशियल प्रोसीजर बोलते हैं बाद में, अगर किसी एडवोकेट को पकड़ के हम अगर कोर्ट के थ्रू उसको नोटिस दे, तो ये जरूरत है क्या ये चीज
कोर्ट
करने
के
की, अगर
थ्रू
मैं
सर सर
एमएससी
सर
में? हाँ।
सर देखिए, कोर्ट के थ्रू कोई नोटिस नहीं होता है। कोर्ट या तो आप उसको एप्लीकेशन डालेंगे कोर्ट को, तब कोर्ट उसमें नोटिस भेजेगी। जब आपने कंसिलिएशन के लिए एमएससीएफसी के सामने तो फाइल कर दिया, अब आप उसमें पैरेलल प्रोसीडिंग्स नहीं कर सकते। आप तो अब वैसे करने के लिए आप कंज्यूमर की कोर्ट में भी चले जाइए, फिर सीपी सिविल कोर्ट में भी जाके केस फाइल कर दीजिए। तब तो आप तो केस ही फाइल करते रहेंगे ना हर हर पैरेलल प्रोसीडिंग्स में। तो दैट इज नॉट अलाउड। If you have taken a refuge under MSMED Act, then you have to pursue your claims under that act only. अगर आप 4 जगह जाके क्लेम करेंगे तो आप ही हारेंगे केस, क्योंकि ये सब अलाउड होती नहीं है पैरेलल प्रोसीडिंग्स, राइट?
ओके, मतलब हमने अगर एमएससी में रजिस्टर किया है कंप्लेंट, तो एमएससी के थ्रू ही उसको टैकल करना पड़ेगा फिर
हाँ, आप एक
सोल्यूशन।
बार चूज कर सकते हैं, आप जो
ओके।
चूज कर रहे हैं आप उसी में आगे बढ़ सकते हैं। आप एक बार चूज कर लिए, उसके बाद आपका वहां पे आपके हिसाब से नहीं चल रहा है, तो आप ऐसा नहीं कर सकते कि अब मैं जाके कंज्यूमर केस में चला जाता हूँ, क्योंकि आपने अब एक बार एमएससीएफसी चूज कर लिया है तो आपको एमएससीएफसी में आगे जाना होगा। तो ये है। और बेसिकली ऐसा है नहीं सर, मतलब कि कोई ऐसा रीजन नहीं है कि आप ऐसा डिस्कशन करते करते आपको कंज्यूमर कोर्ट जाने की जरूरत पड़े। इसीलिए मैं इतना कंफ्यूज था कि कोई ऐसा रीजन ही नहीं हो सकता है कि यू हैव टू गो इनटू कंज्यूमर कोर्ट, क्योंकि अगर आप एक्सेप्ट नहीं कर रहे हैं तो कंसिलिएशन फेल हो जाएगी और उसके बाद आर्बिट्रेशन में चली जाएगी। तो देयर इज नो वे अंडर विच यू कैन गो टू कंज्यूमर कोर्ट। और कंज्यूमर कोर्ट में जाके बोलेंगे क्या वैसे?
बट पैसा मिलेगा क्या सर? बोला वो फाइनल ये है कि अगर एक
पैसा सर आपको वैसे ही मिलेगा। देयर इज नो अदर वे फॉर यू टू गेट योर मनी। आपको प्रोसेस तो कंप्लीट करना ही होगा ना सर। आप ऐसी बात कर रहे हैं जैसे कि सर मैं आपको समझा रहा हूँ, आप ऐसी बात कर रहे हैं कि सर मैंने यहाँ पे फाइल कर दिया, अब मुझको पैसा चाहिए तो मैं 10 जगह और फाइल कर देता हूँ। तो सर ऐसे आपको पैसा नहीं मिलेगा, आपको एक प्रोसेस पूरा कंप्लीट करना पड़ेगा अपने पैसे के लिए। आप 10 जगह प्रोसेस चला के पैसा नहीं ले सकते हैं, या फिर ले सकते हैं अगर आप उसको डरा देंगे इन सब चीजों से, अगर वो डर जाए, लेकिन वो डरेगा नहीं। बेसिकली आप ही फॉल्ट पे होंगे, आपके सारे केसेस डिसमिस हो जाएंगे एक्सेप्ट फॉर द एमएसएमई। तो दैट इज द लॉ, बिकॉज दैट इज द लॉ।
ओके, थैंक यू सो मच सर।
या थैंक यू।
जय मणिकंदन जी, आप अपना क्वेश्चन पूछ सकते हैं सर से।
Thank you, madam. Thank you to
Hello.
all.
Hello.
Thank you for the session. Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. I can hear you.
Okay. मेरा ये क्वेश्चन है कि 1 साल हो गया, 1 साल नहीं 1.5 साल के ऊपर हो गया, एक कस्टमर का पेमेंट अभी तक मिला नहीं। मैं तो पूरा फॉलो कर रहा था 4-5 महीने तक। उसके बाद उनका जो जीएसटी साइट रहता है ना, हमारा जो लॉगिन, उसके अंदर जाके उसमें भी एक ऑप्शन दिखा रहा था कि पेमेंट नहीं मिला करके, एक ऑप्शन वो अपडेट करने के लिए, कौन सा इनवॉइस है, कौन सा तारीख का इनवॉइस है, क्या वैल्यू है, और क्या सर्विस दिए थे, सब कुछ वो करने के बाद वो गुस्सा होके वापस मुझे मैं तो बता रहा था ना तेरे को पैसा दूंगा करके, क्यों डाला, अभी मैं दूंगा नहीं करके वो और खींच रहा है। अभी फिलहाल वो जो अमाउंट है 10,000 15,000 इसके आसपास ही है, तो इसके आगे हमने उसको सर्विस भी नहीं दिया। ओके, तो मेरा क्या कहना है, ऐसे लोगों के लिए आई मीन छोटा मोटा अमाउंट के लिए क्या ऑप्शन अपना एमएसएमई की तरफ से दे रहे हैं?
सर एमएसएमई की तरफ से अगर आप जाएंगे तो आई वुड एडवाइस यू नॉट टू गो फॉर एनी वो, मतलब कि आप एमएसएमई में भी जाएंगे तो अगर आप कोई नॉर्मल प्रोफेशनल भी लेते हैं तो आपका टोटल जितना क्लेम है उससे ज्यादा तो वही चार्ज कर लेंगे। तो इट इज नॉट एडवाइजेबल फॉर यू टू गो टू एमएसएमई। अगर आप खुद से कर सकते हैं ये टोटली, आप खुद से इसको आगे ले जा सकते हैं, तो देन इट्स वेरी वेल एंड गुड। बट आप इसमें ये क्या कर सकते हैं कि सर जो आपका वो है, अगर ये फ्रॉड है या फिर क्रिमिनल ब्रीच ऑफ ट्रस्ट है, तो यू गो एंड यू फाइल एन एफआईआर, यू रिकॉर्ड दैट ट्रांसक्रिप्शन जहां पे उसने आपको बोला कि मैं तेरे को पैसे नहीं दूंगा और ये सब तेरे को जो करना है कर ले। दोज आर ऑल द, मतलब कि it falls under it falls under the criminal elements also in our criminal jurisprudence. So you can go and you can just consult a lawyer, any lawyer. He would tell you 4 to 5 sections under criminal law. Go and file an FIR against that person, send a copy of FIR to that person, ask him to pay 15,000 or else ask him to go and fight the criminal case.
Okay, and there are one customer is like this. Similarly, if we have a lot of customers, okay, because of XYZ reason, one is unable to do pay नहीं कर पा रहा है because of अभी cash crunch है, ये है वो है, तो ये सारा चीज को लिए हम लड़ाई करते करते ही टाइम जाएगा। Is there any faster resolution MSME की तरफ से जो कर रहे हैं? जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल कोई भी पेमेंट उसका स्टिपुलेटेड 45 डेज या 60 डेज के टाइम के ऊपर जा रहा है, उसका कंप्लेंट भी रजिस्टर्ड है, तो उसको आगे का सॉल्व करने के बिना द रेस्पेक्टिव कस्टमर इनवॉइस अपलोड कर नहीं पाएगा, उसका इनवॉइस ऐसे कुछ लॉक कर सकते हैं क्या, ताकि ही विल एटलीस्ट?
नो सर, ऐसे नहीं कर सकते। देयर आर स्पेसिफिक प्लेटफॉर्म्स जो कि गवर्नमेंट ने बनाया है। जेम प्लेटफॉर्म में एक जानता हूँ जो कि गवर्नमेंट का बनाया हुआ प्लेटफॉर्म है, वहां पे आप लोग रजिस्टर करते हैं। तो जेम प्लेटफॉर्म पे हुई हुई ट्रांजैक्शंस के लिए जो आप बोल रहे हैं वैसा किया जा सकता है कि अगर आप डिस्प्यूट रेज कर दिए और डिलेड पेमेंट का डिस्प्यूट है कि वो लोग अभी तक पेमेंट नहीं दिए हैं आपको, तो वो उस प्लेटफॉर्म पे आगे ट्रांजैक्शंस नहीं कर पाएंगे। वो एक रीजन है, बट नॉट टू से तो वो लोग जेम प्लेटफॉर्म पे नहीं करके वो लोग कहीं और से ट्रांजैक्शन करेंगे। तो आप उनको वर्चुअली तो रोक ही नहीं सकते, कैसे भी नहीं रोक सकते कि आप उनका बिजनेस बंद करा दें कि आपका बिना पैसा दिए वो आपका बिजनेस, अपना बिजनेस ही नहीं चला पाए। दैट इज नॉट पॉसिबल अंडर लॉ। ये कैसे भी पॉसिबल नहीं है। आप इसको कहीं से भी किसी से भी पूछ लीजिए या फिर किसी से भी आप कंसल्ट कर सकते हैं। यू कैन नॉट डू दिस, इट इज इलीगल। और अगर आपको अपना रिकोर्स लेना है तो देयर आर लॉज, देयर आर प्रोविजंस, उसी के थ्रू आपको मिलेगा। ऐसे मतलब कि कोई जादू की छड़ी नहीं है ना सर कि आप ऐसे घुमाएंगे और आपके पैसे मिल जाएंगे, चाहे वो 15,000 है, 20,000 है।
नहीं, ऐसा नहीं है कि अग्री करके ही उन्होंने हमारे से सर्विस या गुड्स ले रहे हैं।
यस सर, आई कंप्लीटली अग्री कि आपका
वो लेने
अग्रीमेंट पे
के
साइन
बाद
होगा, सब कुछ होगा, लेकिन आप उसको बंदूक दिखा के पैसे नहीं ले सकते ना। आपके पास प्रोविजंस हैं लॉ में, आप वहीं जाएंगे, आप अपना पैसा मांगने के लिए वही प्रोविजंस का हेल्प लेंगे ना, आप उसको डंडे दिखा के थोड़ी पैसे ले लेंगे। अब
नहीं,
उसने अग्री किया था।
मेरा क्या कहना है तो क्या पर्पस है हम उधर जीएसटी साइट में जो अपलोड करने का प्रोविजन दिए हैं, जस्ट टू नोटिफाई देम दैट ऐसे कंप्लेंट आया है आपका ऊपर करके नोटिफाई दे के क्या फायदा?
सर ये जीएसटी वाला जो आप मुझको बोल रहे हैं, ये तो मुझको शुरू में ही समझ में नहीं आ रहा है कि आप कहाँ पे अपलोड किए हैं, क्या अपलोड किए हैं।
लॉगिन फ्रॉम एनी ऑफ द जीएसटी लॉगिन, अदरवाइज मेरा लॉगिन डिटेल दे दूं
सर
ताकि
पहले
आप।
पहले नहीं सर, ऐसे ऐसे नहीं होता है सर। मैं आपसे पूछना चाहता हूँ कि आपका जीएसटी अमाउंट उन्होंने पे नहीं किया है या फिर आपका अमाउंट उन्होंने पे नहीं
टोटल
किया?
टोटल इनवॉइस अमाउंट ही उन्होंने पे नहीं किया फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल।
तो
ओके,
आपने जीएसटी में जाके ये बोला कि आपका जो जीएसटी का वो है, वो आना था इनके, उससे वो नहीं आया है अभी तक। तो
हाँ,
वो
जीएसटी
जो वो
इनवॉइस
जो कंप्लेंट है वो आपके जीएसटी अमाउंट तक ही वो लिमिटेड है, क्योंकि जीएसटी वाले जो हैं वो सिर्फ जीएसटी अमाउंट तक का ही लाइबिलिटी लेंगे ना सर। वो आपके टोटल इनवॉइस अमाउंट को लेके नहीं चलेंगे, वो बस जीएसटी कंपोनेंट लेके चलेंगे कि आपका जीएसटी कंपोनेंट इनके इनके पेमेंट से इतना आना था जो कि अभी तक नहीं आया है, बिकॉज दे हैव नॉट सबमिटेड योर जीएसटी अमाउंट। दैट इज द कंप्लेंट यू आर सेइंग यू हैव मेड।
हाँ हाँ, क्योंकि
हाँ, तो
उसमें
दैट इज
उन्होंने टोटल पेमेंट ही नहीं किया करके उसमें रिमार्क्स भी है। क्या आपको उसके ऊपर बताना चाह रहे हैं कि कितने दिन से दिया नहीं है, व्हाट वाज द कस्टमर्स
तो
रेस्पॉन्स?
सर दैट इज अ रीजन फॉर यू नॉट टू, मतलब कि आप जीएसटी वालों को रीजन दे रहे हैं कि आपका जीएसटी कंपोनेंट जो है वो आगे नहीं जा पाया है जस्ट बिकॉज ऑफ दिस डिलेड पेमेंट। सो दैट इज यू आर evading the liability of GST from your head by giving them the reason कि this is the reason my GST amount has not gone through, right? So it has nothing to do with the whole claim amount that is due from the other party. जीएसटी डिपार्टमेंट का उससे कोई लेना देना ही नहीं है सर। तो वो आप वहां पे जो अपलोड कर रहे हैं, जो कंप्लेंट कर रहे हैं, वो बस अपना जीएसटी लाइबिलिटी के रेस्पेक्ट में कर रहे हैं और किसी के रेस्पेक्ट में है नहीं वो।
नहीं, मैं मेरा जीएसटी अप टू डेट करते ही रह रहा हूँ एवरी मंथ, इवन दो मेरा कस्टमर का पेमेंट आया या नहीं आया, डिले हो रहा है, वो दैट इज नन ऑफ द केयर बाय द जीएसटी साइट आल्सो, बिकॉज दे इफ आई मेड अ इनवॉइस विद द जीएसटी देन I am liable to pay, okay,
Yeah.
because I am going to take it today or tomorrow or 6 months later or 1
Yeah.
year later,
Yeah.
whatever the time period.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not questioning why they are asking us why I should pay if I don't get the payment. I'm not questioning on those part. If there is a provision given by the GST stating that if any payment is not done by the customer to the specific supplier, they have the option on which invoice number to from which customer or the receiving end GST number is not paid. वो option पूरा clearly उन्होंने रखे हैं। My
तो सर
intention,
मुझको लगता है कि वो बस इंफॉर्मेशन पर्पसेस के लिए है, बिकॉज आई डू नॉट नो ऑफ एनी वे वेयर जीएसटी डिपार्टमेंट कैन कम इन बिटवीन एंड कैन you can facilitate the dispute and delayed payment issues between you and your buyer. जीएसटी डिपार्टमेंट का कोई लेना देना ही नहीं है सर इसमें।
हाँ
तो
हाँ
मैं
हाँ,
आपको बस शुरू से ही ये बता रहा हूँ कि जो भी इंफॉर्मेशन आप वो लोग आपसे मांग रहे हैं या फिर जो भी इंफॉर्मेशन आप जीएसटी डिपार्टमेंट को दे रहे हैं, उनका आपके डिलेड पेमेंट से कोई लेना देना नहीं है। या तो वो इंफॉर्मेशन पर्पसेस के लिए है या तो वो जीएसटी अमाउंट के रिस्पेक्ट के लिए है। तो यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड कि आप किस डिपार्टमेंट को इंफॉर्मेशन दे रहे हैं, राइट? अब आप फॉरेन डिपार्टमेंट आपसे मान लीजिए कि आपका कोई यही सब, ये अगर मान लीजिए कि सेम इंफॉर्मेशन आपसे मांगता है फॉरेन डिपार्टमेंट, तो आप ये नहीं बोल सकते ना कि फॉरेन डिपार्टमेंट मुझसे ये सब क्यों मांगा, तो ये सब का क्या काम है उसको, हो सकता है कि वो इन्फॉर्मेशन के लिए मांग रहा हो, ताकि वो इन्फॉर्मेशन का अपना डेटाबेस बनाए कि ये जो बायर है वो आपको भी पैसे नहीं दिया है, साथ में 4 लोगों को और पैसे नहीं दिया है। तो हो सकता है वो इन्फॉर्मेशन और डेटाबेस के पर्पसेस के लिए हो। आई एम नॉट वेरी मच श्योर ऑफ दिस, बट आई एम श्योर ऑफ दिस कि जीएसटी डिपार्टमेंट हैज नथिंग टू डू विथ योर डिलेड पेमेंट इश्यूज।
ओके, नाउ वन मोर क्वेश्चन इज, अभी मैं एमएसएमई को ये सारा प्रूफ मेल पे देना है या डायरेक्टली जाके सबमिट हार्ड कॉपी देना है?
सर आपका स्टेट कौन सा है?
तमिलनाडु।
सो यू सर्च, गूगल पे आप सर्च करिए सर, तमिलनाडु माइक्रो स्मॉल मीडियम एंटरप्राइजेस रूल्स। वो रूल्स आप खोलेंगे, एमएसएमईडी एक्ट के साथ हर स्टेट गवर्नमेंट ने अपना रूल्स बनाया है। वो रूल्स जब आप खोलेंगे तो उसके लास्ट पेज पे नॉर्मली मेजरली स्टेट्स के लिए एक वे दिया हुआ है कि कैसे आप एप्लीकेशन डाल सकते हैं। वो आप रेफर करिए, इट्स वेरी मच सिंपल। उसमें बस आपको लिखना होता है सम इंफॉर्मेशन एंड यू हैव टू सेंड इट थ्रू registered post, or you can also go physically and hand it over to them, no problem.
Okay, by submitting the hard copy either by registered post or by hand,
yeah.
It is taken for as a complaint from the service provider.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then it is taken as per their regular rules and regulations.
Yeah, exactly.
ओके ओके, मेरा एक कहना यह है कि हमारा हर एक का जीएसटी और डिटेल्स जो
पंकज जी आप अपना क्वेश्चन पूछ सकते हैं सर से।
हाँ, गुड आफ्टरनून सर।
गुड आफ्टरनून पंकज जी, गुड आफ्टरनून।
कैन यू हियर मी सर?
या आई कैन हियर फाइन।
ओके, मेरा क्वेश्चन ये, हम मेनली हमारा सप्लाई जो रहता है वो गवर्नमेंट पीएसयू कंपनी और यूटिलिटी बोर्ड को है। तो जनरली क्या होता है कि नॉर्मल पेमेंट टर्म्स 15 डेज 30 डेज होता है, पर वो लोग पेमेंट करने में कभी कभी 120 डेज 100 डेज कर देते हैं। और रीजन बिहाइंड दैट
इज वेरी कॉमन प्रॉब्लम सर, इट्स वेरी कॉमन प्रॉब्लम।
इसमें हम क्या इंटरेस्ट के लिए क्लेम कर सकते हैं एमएसएमई?
बिल्कुल कर सकते हैं सर, लेकिन आपको इसके लिए आपको उनको एक नोटिस देना पड़ेगा। शुरू में एक अच्छा सा नोटिस आप बनाइए कि दीज आर ऑल द पेमेंट टर्म्स दैट यू हैव ऑलरेडी एक्सपायर्ड, मतलब कि आपने ये सब पेमेंट्स जो है हमारे 45 टर्म्स जो अलाउड होता है उसके बाद करी हैं। हाउएवर हमने आपसे इंटरेस्ट अभी तक नहीं मांगा है, लेकिन आज के बाद हमारा जो इंटरेस्ट एप्लीकेबल होगा वो 45 डेज स्ट्रिक्ट बियॉन्ड एक भी दिन से हमारा इंटरेस्ट एप्लीकेबल होगा आपके साथ कोई से भी ट्रांजैक्शंस पे। तो उसके बाद का आप 1 साल 2 साल वेट कीजिए। अगर उनका कोई पेमेंट्स लेट आता है तो वो सारे पे आप इंटरेस्ट कैलकुलेट करिए और 1-2 साल में उनको रेज कर दीजिए अपना इंटरेस्ट। सो दैट इज हाउ यू कैन गो।
नहीं, जनरली हमारा केस टू केस रहता है कि एक सप्लाई हो गया, बाद में उसके साथ रेगुलर नहीं रहता है।
तो सर अगर मान लीजिए कि जो पेमेंट में लेट हुई है तो वो उनको उतने दिन का डेट जितना लेट हुआ है उतने दिन का इंटरेस्ट कैलकुलेट करके आप उनको वो भेज दीजिए। जब आपको वो पेमेंट करे 120 डेज के बाद भी, लेट्स से आप 45 डेज को ही उनको एक मेल भेज दीजिए कि आज अगर आपका पेमेंट नहीं आएगा तो नेक्स्ट डे से 3 टाइम्स ऑफ इंटरेस्ट चार्जेबल होगा एज पर दिस प्रोविजन ऑफ एमएसएमईडी एक्ट। और अगर फिर भी नहीं करते हैं, फिर भी 120 दिन के बाद वो कर रहे हैं, तो जो पेमेंट वो लोगों ने किया है उसके बाद आप अपना कैलकुलेट करिए इंटरेस्ट और उनको वो इंटरेस्ट का इनवॉइस भी भेज दीजिए कि ये आपका इंटरेस्ट कंपोनेंट है, ये भी हमको पे कर दीजिए बिकॉज दिस मच इंटरेस्ट इज एप्लीकेबल, क्योंकि आपने 120 दिन का टाइम लिया है।
और वो रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट कहाँ कितना ले सकते हैं?
3 टाइम्स आरबीआई का नोटिफाइड रेट।
ओके,
या
तो वो थ्रू एमएसएमई हमें भेजना है कि डायरेक्ट मेल पे हम क्लेम कर सकते हैं?
नहीं सर, जैसे आपको कोई भी, आप उनको पहले इनवॉइस भेजेंगे कि हमारा इतना इंटरेस्ट बनता है सर एमएसएमई के, उसके लिए या तो हो सकता है वो लोग आपको खुद से दे दें वो अमाउंट, या तो वो लोग मना कर दें कि हम लोग इंटरेस्ट नहीं देंगे। तब आपको वो केस फाइल करना होगा एमएससी एफसी में रेफरेंस में, जैसा कि मैं अभी जय जी को बता रहा था कि कैसे होता है। यू हैव टू टेक आउट द रूल्स, उसमें ऐसा दिया हुआ है कि कैसे कैसे आपको भरना है, आप वो भरते हैं और एमएससी एफसी में फाइल कर देते हैं।
ओके। और एक गवर्नमेंट ने एक पोर्टल बनाया था, समाधान पोर्टल, अगर डिले हो रहा है तो उसमें भी कंप्लेन कर सकते हैं।
हाँ हाँ हाँ, दोनों में कर सकते हैं, समाधान पोर्टल में भी कर सकते हैं आप, जो आपको अच्छा लगे, जो आपके लिए कन्वीनियंट हो, आप उसका वो कर सकते हैं। इट कैन ऑल्सो बी डन बाय समाधान पोर्टल। या
ओके, थैंक
थैंक यू।
शंकर जी, आप अपना क्वेश्चन पूछ सकते हैं सर से। शंकर पाटिल जी।
दे रहे हैं?
हेलो शंकर जी, हेलो।
सुनाई दे रहा है?
हाँ जी, हाँ जी।
यस यस।
सर मेरा जो क्लेम है ड्यू था 2017 को ड्यू था फ्रॉम माय कस्टमर।
2017 का ड्यूज है?
हाँ जी हाँ जी हाँ जी। तो
तो सर
उसके
उस पर
बाद में
लिमिटेशन लग गया है ऑलरेडी, आई गेस।
लग गया ना। तो
हाँ जी
उसके
सर।
बाद में क्या करस्पॉन्डेंस चल रहा है मेरे कस्टमर के साथ में।
अच्छा।
मेरा कस्टमर से 4-5 करस्पॉन्डेंस भी हुआ है, wherein actually मेरा कस्टमर इज PSU. What he is asking is GST पेमेंट प्रूफ का प्रूफ पूछ रहा है वो। For that we have replied that हमको GST लगता ही नहीं है, hence we cannot provide you any proof that we have paid the GST करके। तो ये सिनेरियो में लिमिटेशन एक्ट अभी स्टिल करस्पॉन्डेंस इज गोइंग ऑन। उन्होंने डिनाई नहीं किया अभी तक। इनफैक्ट सितंबर 22 में उन्होंने लेटर लिखा था GST डिपार्टमेंट को saying that you get the proof of some corresponding is going on. So still the limitation act will apply.
Sir, it is complex in nature. What you are saying, Section 18 of Limitation and Section 19 of Limitation Act says कि अगर Limitation Act के within अगर कोई acknowledgement आती है अदर पार्टी की कि okay this much due is मतलब कि this much is due and I acknowledge that this is the due from my side which I have to pay to you. तो अगर वो 3 साल के बीच में आई है, लेट्स से आपका 2017 को ड्यू था तो आपका 2020 को लिमिटेशन खत्म हो रहा था, तो 2017 से 2020 के बीच में अगर कोई ऐसी एक्नॉलेजमेंट आती है तो उस दिन जिस दिन वो एक्नॉलेजमेंट आई थी फिर से 3 साल शुरू हो जाएगा, तो मतलब कि रिफ्रेश हो जाता है वो लिमिटेशन। तो लेकिन आपको वो हर कॉरेस्पॉन्डेंस, अगर कॉरेस्पॉन्डेंस चल रही है बस ऐसे ही, तो वो एक्नॉलेजमेंट नहीं होता है। एक्नॉलेजमेंट बहुत ही स्पेसिफिक वे में होता है, बहुत सारे केस लॉज हैं इस पे। तो इसमें एक्नॉलेजमेंट में 2-3 एलिमेंट होते हैं कि इट हैज टू बी इन राइटिंग, जो आपका जिस पे ड्यू है वही लिख रहा है, वो ऐसे बोल रहा है कि हाँ मैं एक्नॉलेज करता हूँ कि मेरा इतना ड्यू है एंड आई विल पे यू। तो ये सब एलिमेंट्स होते हैं, अगर ये सब एलिमेंट्स है तभी उसको एक्नॉलेजमेंट मान के रिफ्रेश किया जा सकता है। अदरवाइज नॉर्मल कॉरेस्पॉन्डेंस हो रही है, कम्युनिकेशन हो रही है, तो इट वुड नॉट बी कंस्ट्रूड एज एक्नॉलेजमेंट ऑफ योर ड्यूज।
लेकिन he has not denied also, वो डिनाई भी नहीं कर रहा है।
I am again and again saying normal communication won't go through. It is already decided by a lot of case laws that it has to be in a certain manner. It has to be acknowledged. It has to be in writing. It has to be given by the person जिस पे आपका अमाउंट ड्यू है। तो अब वो डिनाई नहीं कर रहा है, it is not a valid argument. It has to be in the way it is provided under law.
Understood. इसमें एक ही लास्ट आई हैव, फॉर एग्जांपल इन द रिकॉर्ड्स दे इफ दे आर सेइंग दैट दे आर सपोज्ड टू पे मी, सो दैट विल हेल्प मी सेइंग दैट।
सो यू आर सेइंग कि उनके बैलेंस शीट में वो आपको दिखाते हैं कि मेरा इतना अमाउंट,
राइट।
हाँ, तो बैलेंस शीट में अगर वो दिखा रहे हैं तो इट इज एन एक्नॉलेजमेंट। यस,
इट इज एन एक्नॉलेजमेंट ना, इवन दो इट मे बी बियॉन्ड 3 इयर्स आल्सो।
हाँ हाँ हाँ, अगर वो हर साल, अगर अपना 2017 से वो हर साल दिखाते आ रहे हैं बैलेंस शीट में, देन एवरी ईयर इट इज एन एक्नॉलेजमेंट।
Okay. Or if I have a letter, say in maybe a month back, saying that these are the dues that they are supposed to pay me, then वहां से 3 साल चालू हो जाएगा, right?
नहीं, वो मैं आपको देखिए सर, आपको समझना पड़ेगा कि 3 साल के लिमिटेशन के बीच में ही वो एक्नॉलेजमेंट आनी चाहिए। अब 2017 के ड्यूज का 2023 में आप एक्नॉलेजमेंट ले रहे हैं तो दैट इज नॉट अ वैलिड एक्नॉलेजमेंट।
लेकिन बैलेंस शीट इज एन वैलिड एक्नॉलेजमेंट।
बैलेंस शीट इज अ वैलिड एक्नॉलेजमेंट। यस।
ओके। और गवर्नमेंट के रिकॉर्ड्स में कैसा रहता है, कुछ आइडिया है सर आपको? गवर्नमेंट अगर देना है, क्योंकि वो कैसे दे डोंट शो एज इट पेंडिंग, बिकॉज़ दे डोंट शो एनीथिंग एज ड्यू।
They do not show it as pending. So how do they show it?
Okay. ठीक है। Actually I am getting a letter from them. This in fact they have also agreed कि चलो इतना ड्यूज है करके हम एक लेटर दे देंगे करके आपको।
सर आपको
लेकिन आज
पहले ये
देने
बताना होगा कि बैलेंस शीट में वो लोग 2017 से पेंडिंग दिखा रहे हैं या नहीं। मैं आपको पहले ही बता रहा हूँ कि
ओके, बैलेंस
2023
शीट
का जो
इंपॉर्टेंट
आप बोल रहे हैं लेटर, इट इज ऑफ नो यूज इफ देयर इज
है।
नो एक्नॉलेजमेंट इन बिटवीन 2017 to 2020।
बैलेंस शीट इज अ क्राइटेरिया आफ्टर द 3 years period।
सर
Yeah.
देखिए,
और एक था ये अभी लॉकडाउन में सम एक्सटेंशन मिला है ना फॉर आर्बिट्रेशन के लिए, सम 2 years सुप्रीम कोर्ट का जो ऑर्डर आया था।
सर वो है कि आपका 1 साल का डिफर कर दिया गया है लिमिटेशन।
ओके,
वो 2020 से 2021 तक का साल पूरा डिफर किया हुआ है लिमिटेशन का, बट दैट इज नॉट टू से कि अगर आप कुछ नहीं कर रहे हैं तो वो डिफर काम करता है, ऐसा नहीं होता है सर। इट इज अ कॉम्प्लेक्स वे ऑफ अप्लाइंग। तो
Okay.
आपको उसमें नहीं जाना है, आप बस एक बार अपना बैलेंस शीट चेक करिएगा जाके उनके पीएसयू का, जिनसे आपका अमाउंट ड्यू है। आपको ये देखना है कि 2017 से 2020 के बीच में अगर उनका एक्नॉलेजमेंट आया है या फिर उनके बैलेंस शीट में ये लिखा है कि मुझे इस आदमी को या इस एंटरप्राइज को इतने पैसे देने हैं, देन इट इज अ वैलिड एक्नॉलेजमेंट। अगर ऐसा कुछ नहीं आया है, then you cannot go and you cannot claim that amount anymore.
इवन फॉर बिकॉज़ एमएसएमई के साइट में ऐसा लिखा है कि लिमिटेशन एक्ट अप्लाई नहीं होता है करके।
सर ऐसा कुछ नहीं है सर, आपको ये सब कोई भी ऐसे कुछ भी बोल रहा है। आप
नहीं,
पहले ही
ऐसा
अपना
क्यों नहीं,
लिमिटेशन
सर,
एक्ट
ऐसा
लगा
क्यों
चुके हैं
नहीं सर, ऐसा
आपका।
क्यों नहीं?
नहीं, सर मतलब मैं बोलना
गवर्नमेंट
ये
ऐसा
चाहता
क्यों
हूँ
है?
कि सर मैं ये बोलना चाहता हूँ कि आप 3 साल तो कुछ नहीं किए, ये आपकी पूरी ही गलती है। ठीक है सर,
नहीं,
ये
that's okay,
आपकी।
देखो अभी गलती हो गई, दैट्स फाइन।
हाँ जी, तो अब आप एक्सटेंड नहीं कर सकते ना, आप जबरदस्ती अपना क्लेम एंटरटेन नहीं करा सकते।
नहीं,
अगर
मेरे
वो
कहने का
एंटरटेन
मतलब
होना होगा तो वो लिमिटेड ग्राउंड्स पे ही होगा, जो मैंने आपको बताई। अगर
आई
वो
गॉट योर
लिमिटेड
पॉइंट।
ग्राउंड्स है तो देन वेल एंड गुड, अगर नहीं है तो सर वो क्लेम अब हो नहीं सकता कुछ भी।
सर मेरा कहने का मतलब एमएसएमई के वेबसाइट में एफएक्यू में खुद लिखा है उन्होंने, सेइंग दैट लिमिटेशन एक्ट विल नॉट अप्लाई टू दिस कैटेगरीज करके।
सर आप फाइल करके देख लीजिए सर फिर।
ओके ओके,
मैं लॉयर हूँ सर, मैं एडवोकेट हूँ, मैं कर रहा हूँ। अगर आपको ऐसा लगता है कि अगर नहीं है, अगर हो जाएगा तो आप करके देख लीजिए सर। अगर हो जाता है तो मुझको ही बताइएगा।
योगेश जी, आप अपना क्वेश्चन पूछ सकते हैं। सर वन मोर क्वेश्चन एंड
या श्योर।
इट्स टू लेट। योगेश जी, आप अपना क्वेश्चन पूछ सकते हैं।
हेलो।
यस योगेश, यस योगेश जी, you're on mute.
सर आवाज आ रही है मेरी?
या आई कैन हियर यू।
हाँ जी सर, मैंने 2020 जनवरी में ना एमएसएमई में समाधान के अंदर मैंने डाला था, एमएसएफसी में केस डाला था मैंने, है ना? तो एमएसएमई एक्ट है ना, वो तो डेफिनेशन में कहता है भी अगर आपने रजिस्टर्ड बाद में भी कराया है, मान लो मैंने सर्विसेज दी और मैंने रजिस्टर्ड अगर बाद में कराया है तब भी आप उसमें कर सकते हो।
नो सर, दैट इज अ वेरी रॉन्ग अंडरस्टैंडिंग। नो, इट इज नोवेयर रिटन इन एमएसएमई एक्ट।
नहीं, एक्ट में लिखा हुआ है उसमें।
नो सर, नहीं लिखा है।
एंटरप्राइज
सर कैसी बात कर रहे हो सर? अभी सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने 1 महीने पहले यही बोला है कि आप जब रजिस्टर्ड नहीं थे और तब आपने कोई ट्रांजैक्शन किया है और उसके बाद आपने एमएसएमई का रजिस्ट्रेशन लिया है तो आप एमएसएमई एक्ट में नहीं जा सकते। अब आप ये बोलना चाहते हैं कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने एमएसएमई एक्ट नहीं पढ़ा है, तो अब मैं कुछ नहीं बोल सकता।
नहीं, देखिए सुप्रीम कोर्ट का जो आया ना, फर्स्ट ऑर्डर आया था, शिल्पी का आया था जून 2021 में। उससे पहले जितने भी ऑर्डर आप देखोगे, हाई कोर्ट के भी ऑर्डर थे, सारे ये कहते थे कि एमएसएमई की डेफिनेशन है,
मुझको पता है सर, मैं
है सप्लायर वो। हाँ जी
सर, मैं एडवोकेट हूँ, मुझको पता है कि हाई कोर्ट्स के कंफ्लिक्टिंग जजमेंट्स थे जो कि बाद में सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने अभी सेटल किया। तो आपको ये बात पता है ना कि हाई कोर्ट्स के डिसीजन के ऊपर सुप्रीम कोर्ट का डिसीजन होता है। इफ सुप्रीम कोर्ट हैज डिसाइडेड इट, इट इज टू बी अप्लाइड ऑल ओवर इंडिया। इट इज अ लॉ ऑल ओवर इंडिया। हाई कोर्ट्स का डिसीजन मैटर नहीं करता।
नहीं, आप एक चीज बताइए, हमने जो किया था जनवरी 2020 में किया था, ठीक है? ये जो जजमेंट आया जून 2021 में आया। अब हमने तो इसलिए किया था कि हमें था कि 90 डेज के अंदर हो जाएगा ये, वो हुआ जाके अब हुआ है जाके आफ्टर 3 years, मोर देन 3 years। अब बताइए, हमने तो उसी में किया था ना।
क्या 3 years में क्या हुआ सर?
सर उसका जो पहले क्या हुआ, जो हमने केस डाला ना हमने, तो पहले उसकी ऑनलाइन कैंसिलेशन हुई एमएससी की तरफ से।
आप बोल रहे हैं 90 डेज में डिसाइड होने वाला था, वो 3 साल में डिसाइड हुआ।
हाँ, वो 3 सवा 3 साल लगे हैं अब ना।
हाँ जी।
देखिए हमने तो इसी इंप्रेशन में डाला था कि हमें 90 डेज में हो जाएगा, है ना?
हाँ
और
जी,
तब तक क्या उसके 1.5 साल तक भी कोई ऐसा ऑर्डर नहीं था। तब तक
हाँ
यही
जी।
था कि हम जिससे भी पूछते थे, MSCFC के और भी कहीं थे, वो कहते थे हाँ हो जाएगा जी, आप हो आप। अच्छा
तो सर
दूसरी
आपको
बात,
ये देखिए योगेश जी, मैं
नहीं नहीं
आपको
आप
एकदम
एक
बिल्कुल
नहीं
क्लियर
सर,
कर देता
नहीं
हूँ, मैं
नहीं
आपकी
सर,
बात समझ
नहीं
गया,
सर,
मैं आपकी बात समझ
मैं सर कुछ और भी कह रहा हूँ, मैं ये भी कह रहा हूँ कि हमें MSME ने फिर क्यों नहीं हमें रिजेक्ट किया, हमें 3 साल तक हमने आर्बिट्रेशन फी भी दी, हमने अराउंड 1.5-2 लाख हमने आर्बिट्रेशन सेंटर में फीस दी। अब
हाँ, तो आप
लास्ट
वो
में
वापस मांग सकते हैं सर, वो आप बिल्कुल वापस मांग सकते हैं,
हम्म,
आप वो वापस मांग सकते हैं। दैट
हाँ
इज
हाँ
व्हाट आई एम सेइंग
हाँ
कि
हाँ
अगर उन्होंने आपका रजिस्टर किया, उन्होंने आपका फीस लिया और
हाँ
बाद
हाँ
में वो बोले कि
हाँ
ये
हाँ
आप कर ही नहीं सकते थे, देन यू
हाँ,
कैन क्लेम योर
क्योंकि
फीस बैक।
क्योंकि देखिए, और वो केस भी चलता रहा हमारा, पहले 3 बार हमारी कंसलेशन हुई, पहले MSCFC में हुई, फिर MSCFC जो बाद में साउथ वेस्ट में डिस्ट्रिक्ट में चला गया था, वहां हुई कंसलेशन दूसरी बार, तीसरी बार DSC दिल्ली आर्बिट्रेशन सेंटर के साथ कंसलेशन हुई, फिर आर्बिट्रेशन हुआ, आर्बिट्रेशन में उसने रिजर्व रखा ऑर्डर, फिर 3 महीने बाद उसने ऑर्डर दिया, उसमें बताया जी ये तो आपका एज पर जो है जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट का ऑर्डर है उससे हो गया। और
बिल्कुल
देखिए,
सर, देखिए आपका 3 महीने में भी हो जाता उस समय, और
हाँ
आपको
हाँ
अगर कुछ मिल जाता और
हाँ
बाद
हाँ
में सुप्रीम कोर्ट इसको रिवर्स कर देती,
हाँ
तो
जी,
ऐसा नहीं था कि आपका वाला जो वो था वो ऐसे वो हो जाता, समझ रहे हैं आप,
नहीं रिवर्स
आपका भी फिर भी क्वेश्चन में ही होता,
है ना, हाँ हाँ
क्योंकि
नहीं,
क्योंकि क्योंकि वो गलत लॉ से चल रहा था ना आपका, उस
हाँ
समय
हाँ
का जो
हाँ हाँ
अंडरस्टैंडिंग थी दैट वाज रॉन्ग लॉ,
हाँ
इट वाज
हाँ,
सेटल्ड बाय सुप्रीम कोर्ट नाउ। तो
हम्म।
अभी ऐसा नहीं है कि उस समय आपका 3 महीने में हो जाना चाहिए था, गलत लॉ पे हो जाता तो हो जाता, ऐसा तो नहीं
अच्छा
होता ना
अच्छा, अब
सर।
एक चीज बताइए, एक चीज बताइए, अगर ये दूसरी पार्टी है, दूसरी पार्टी ने ये इशू रेज नहीं किया था कि भाई ये बाद में हुए थे रजिस्टर्ड, है ना, उसमें इशू ही नहीं था ये, फिर जो
सर
आर्बिट्रेटर है वो कैसे जजमेंट दे सकता है इसमें?
नहीं सर, ये आपको समझना पड़ेगा कि सर आप देखिए, आप मैं आपको फिर भी बता रहा हूँ कि अगर मैं आपसे लॉ की बात करने बैठूंगा सर, तो
हाँ जी,
इसमें 1000 तरीके के जजमेंट्स है, 1000 तरीके के एक्ट्स हैं जो कि हम लोग बात कर सकते हैं, ठीक है सर।
हाँ हाँ,
तो अब आपको ये नहीं करना है कि उन्होंने तो नहीं बोला तो मेरा कैसे रिजेक्ट हो गया, क्योंकि आप नहीं जा सकते थे एमएसएमईडी एक्ट में, यू आर नॉट एलिजिबल फॉर अ रिकोर्स अंडर एमएसएमईडी एक्ट, देयर हैज नथिंग टू डू विद द अदर पार्टी, कि अदर पार्टी बोलेगी तब आपका रिजेक्ट होगा, नहीं, आप ही नहीं जा सकते हैं, ये आपकी इनएलिजिबिलिटी थी जाने की, तो आपको रिजेक्ट किया
तो
गया, आपको ऐसे समझना है।
सर मुझे तो 3 साल, 3.25 साल बाद बोला गया ना ये,
सर
सब
मैं
कुछ हो
आपको
गया
तभी
उस,
तो बोल रहा हूँ कि उस समय आपका गलत लॉ से चल रहा था, तो आप अब ये नहीं बोल सकते ना कि मेरा उसी गलत लॉ से चला हो।
सर देखती
3 साल
बताइए
लगे, 5 साल लगे, 15 साल भी लगे,
सर हमारा,
लेकिन अगर गलत लॉ से अगर कुछ चल रहा है,
हाँ जी,
मैं आपको एक सिंपल आपको वो देता हूँ
नहीं नहीं
कि
सर, एक चीज बताइए,
पांच
हम,
पांच पांच एक सेकंड मेरी बात सुनिए सर, 5 साल पहले होमोसेक्सुअलिटी इलीगल थी, अगर मैं 5 साल पहले कन्विक्ट हुआ था, तो अगर आज इलीगल होता है तो आपके हिसाब से मुझको जेल ही में रहना चाहिए, क्योंकि मैं तो तब डिसाइड हुआ था।
योगेश जी, आफ्टर वेबिनार हमारी टीम आपको कॉल कर लेगी। सर लास्ट क्वेश्चन ले रही हूँ मैं, हितेश जी का क्वेश्चन है, चैट बॉक्स में मेंशन है यहाँ पर। माय इंटीमेशन, आप चैट बॉक्स में देख पा रहे हैं?
एक सेकेंड,
मैं एक बार उनको कनेक्ट ही कर लेती हूँ। हितेश जी आप अपना क्वेश्चन पूछ सकते हैं। हितेश जी आप अपना क्वेश्चन पूछ सकते हैं। ओके, intimation filed converted into case by MSME, but it's still not get any further payment. What to do now? How much time MSME need to clear?
हाँ, ऐसे बहुत सारे, ये भी बहुत कॉमन इशू है हितेश जी की, 90 डेज लिखा हुआ होता है, बट आपने अभी ये सुना कि 3 साल लग जा रहे हैं एमएसएमई को केसेस वोसेस वो करने में, बट आई हैव नॉट सीन कि 3 साल लगे हैं। मैंने जितने भी केसेस किए हैं वो कभी भी 3 साल तक तो नहीं गए, मैंने जितने भी केसेस किए हैं वो 1 साल से 1.5 साल में खत्म ही हो जाते हैं, मतलब कि मैं पहली बार सुना हूँ आज किसी से कि वो उनका 3 साल चला है एमएसएमई में। और अगर ऐसा होता है आपके साथ, अगर इनऑर्डिनेट डिलेज हो रही है आपके साथ, तो आपको कुछ ना कुछ तो करना पड़ेगा। यू ट्राई एंड गो टॉक टू दी एमएसएमई ऑफिसर्स, जो ऑफिसर्स हैं वहां पे, उनसे बोलिए कि थोड़ा प्रॉम्प्टली करें इसको। अगर वो नहीं कर रहे हैं और बहुत ज्यादा टाइम लग रहा है, तो लास्टली व्हाट यू कैन डू इज यू कैन अप्रोच द हाई कोर्ट बाय अ रिट पिटिशन सेइंग कि सर it is written 90 days under the act, but they have already taken 6 months, 1 year, जो भी आपका टाइम ले रहे हैं वो, and they are still not deciding it, please direct them to decide it. So that is the only recourse I know. अदरवाइज आप कुछ नहीं कर सकते उनके रिक्वेस्ट करने के लिए, रिक्वेस्ट के अलावा कि सर हमारा केस पहले सुन लीजिए, हमारा केस टेकअप कर लीजिए।
हितेश जी, मैं आपसे कहना चाहूंगी, हमारी टीम आपको कांटेक्ट कर लेगी आफ्टर वेबिनार। सर बहुत सारे क्वेश्चंस रहते हैं अभी और टाइम बहुत ज्यादा निकल गया है, और मैं सभी से रिक्वेस्ट करना चाहूंगी कि जो भी क्वेश्चन रहता है आफ्टर वेबिनार हमारी टीम कॉल करेगी तो आप बता देना, देन हम सर से आपकी बात करा सकते हैं। और थैंक यू सो मच सर, आज के लिए बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया सर, आपने अपना इतना कीमती वक्त वेबिनार के लिए हमारे लिए उद्यमिता हेल्पलाइन के लिए दिया। थैंक यू सो मच सर।
थैंक यू सो मच। थैंक यू।